Hi everyone, welcome to the Racist War on Everything. This is our first show since our little summer hiatus. Also our first show of 2024. So we hope you had a good Christmas and we wish you a happy new year, although as usual, we're not going to be bringing you too much good news. Certainly our opening story is going to trigger a lot of you. Finian and Knowlesy with you, of course. And,
Hello.
well, the other big first here is that this is going to be the first episode that is published on the rightstuff.biz. So it's probably not a well-kept secret because anyone who listened to Sven's stream, the one that went for nearly 4 hours, I have to say that was one of the most entertaining things I heard all of 2023.
Yeah.
Especially to hear periodic references to our own show on it.
Are you also plagued by a miasma of schizophrenia?
Not particularly. I don't think so. I take my meds, man. But no, it was kind of funny hearing that. And yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, some very nice Americans and a Canadian as well, was it?
Oh, yes.
Sort of held Sven's feet to the fire and asked for a login. So thank you very much to Sven for that. Thank you to those North Americans as well for the pressure. Thanks to Ranbot as well, who has shielded for us pretty hard. And I think pushed for this as well. So yeah.
And thanks to my boy White Bracer.
Yeah, well, and if you are new to the show, very simple. We basically just analyse the past week in Australian politics from a white nationalist perspective. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed it, and so on with the show. Now, we have to, of course, start with laws that have just come into effect. These are what you could broadly call hate speech laws, hate gesture laws even. So we talked about these a lot last year. There was various state legislation either being proposed or passed that outlawed certain symbols, certain gestures, certain types of speech. And of course, the Commonwealth was also wanting to appease the Jewish lobby as well with their own laws. And, you know, like lawyers will tell you that there's this thing called duplication where, you know, the Commonwealth and the states try not to duplicate laws. There's, you know, it's clearly demarcated.
Yeah.
And that is why initially when Mark Dreyfus was talking about these laws last year, he didn't, for example, include Nazi gestures. This is how they describe them, by the way, not me. So, you know, things like Roman salutes. And I love that graphic showing, like, you know, depending on the angle of your arm, you're committing a hate crime. You know, you could be hailing a bus, patting a dog, waving at someone. But if it's at a particular angle, what?
Well, that entire graph, we're going to read into the law, but that entire graph actually might be illegal considering it's with reason and as suspected or as seen by the public.
Yes, well, we will get into the nitty-gritty of these laws as well. We've got some paragraphs. Don't worry, this isn't going to be like a law lecture, but we do have some paragraphs to read out verbatim because they're very telling about exactly what they want to do here. So anyway, as I said, to avoid that kind of duplication, or I guess to say, well, it's just better left up to the states. Mark Dreyfus did say that because gestures are more of a thing that are done out in public, and by public here I mean actually like outdoors, like not in the digital realm, which these laws cover too, of course. And so he said, you know, that's a thing for police, and that's just everyday beat cops who, of course, are managed by the states and not the federal government. Now, the Liberal Party didn't like this. They said, no, you should be covering everything. Forget about duplication. Forget about what is better left to the states to manage. You just need to go a whole hog in here. So essentially, you had a case of both sides of politics not just expressing bipartisan support for these laws and the aims of these laws, but actually competing with each other to see who could appease the Jewish lobby the most. So those are back in now, and there's been some other kind of last-minute amendments too, not just the gestures that we'll go through.
Well, again, in terms of just like harping on duplication, there's already laws in Victoria. We're seeing a case. I believe we're seeing a case against Jacob Assant. And there was already arrests made in the New South Wales when guys threw a Roman out front of a Holocaust museum. So those are the two most populous states in this country, and they already have laws in the books for this. So to blanket do it federally at this point is probably the most egregious case of duplication of laws we've probably seen in this country's history.
Yeah, that's right. It wouldn't be done in any other circumstances. And yeah, I mean, what the argument that the Liberal Party basically has is, well, there are some jurisdictions that haven't passed laws like these yet. So you need to make sure you can just cast the net as wide as you possibly can. But yeah, look, I just wanted to play some quick audio from Michaelia Cash, who is the Shadow Attorney General. And this is what she had to say about the previous draft of the bill and what the Liberals wanted to have included.
The Coalition will be moving an amendment to allow for a review of these laws, which in our view should be conducted by a preeminent member of the Jewish community to ensure that these laws are doing what they are meant to do. We may well find as a result, if of that review, that these narrow laws as drafted by the government need to be expanded to properly deal with anti-Semitism in Australia.
Okay, so she went further there. All right. I'm sorry, I should have played a different clip where she was talking about the Nazi salute. But anyway, she goes that step further to actually say, okay, we're glad you capitulated. We're glad you threw that in and you added in the other changes that we wanted. But we're going to go even further, because even though this is kind of all the Jewish lobby is asking for right now, we don't know if they might want something else further down the line. So that means we have to have a review of the current situation and how the laws have been applied, who's getting arrested, what the outcomes are. And then we need to get a prominent member of the Jewish community, that's how she described it there, to actually sit down and tell us whether or not the laws are working. And if they're not, we have to change them accordingly. You know?
Again, like, homework for the people listening, go and Google this law, which, as it stands, I'll bring up the name of the law. Counter-terrorism legislation amendment, prohibited hate symbols and other measures, Bill 2023. Go and look up that law without a mention of organizations such as the Executive Council of Australian Jewry and the Australian Jewish Association. I'll give you a spoiler. You will not. So that's probably who she's talking about.
Yeah. Oh, look, if you are, we probably do have some Americans now listening, some more. I have to say I found it surprising that North Americans were listening to our show. I mean, it's great that they're doing it. But, just because everything we cover here is domestic, that's good they find that interesting. Anyway, the legislation is now freely available. And I had a quick squiz through it. I haven't had time, obviously, to go through the lot. I do encourage people, particularly if you have like a bit of a legal background, to have a squiz through this.
Please read this purposely vague bullshit.
Yeah. Now, I had this up and I shouldn't have. Here it is. All right. So some of this I'll read out exactly. Some of this I will just sort of summarize. But anyway, we're going to give you sort of the meat of the laws here. So,
take your liberty, because they're taking it from us too.
Yeah, and Well, yeah. By the way, considering this bill is like just as much the doing of the Liberal Party as it is by the Labor Party. Aren't the Liberals supposed to be the party of civil liberties and individual freedom? And here, they're gung ho on outlawing the angles of your arm and symbols. Anyway, what are those prohibited symbols? Well, it says here a prohibited Nazi symbol, a prohibited terrorist organization symbol. Actually, I think we should pause there on that one. The terrorist organization symbol. The ISIS flag, now, they're not going after it. Now, this was another amendment. I'm not sure if this really had anything to do with the Liberal Party. This was more the consultations that the Labor Party had with members of the Muslim community. Yep. So the original draft was going to outlaw the ISIS flag. Now, after they consulted with the Muslim community, they found that I forget what's on the flag exactly, but basically, if you take, sorry,
the nasheed.
Okay, which is like something holy to Muslims, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a statement of faith. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet.
Right. So they backed down from that. That's been taken out of the law now, and it's basically because the ISIS flag uses like holy symbols. Therefore, it would be encroaching upon religious liberties if you were to ban it because of those Muslims, the Muslim symbolism that is contained within it.
If you go to a decent mosque and you look at the banners, a little like this, sometimes it's gold, sometimes it's copper colored. It's generally a metallic color, but it's a band probably about like 9 to 10 feet above the ground, and it's just the nasheed all over and over and over and over again around the entire area of the mosque.
Okay, but look, here's my response to that, just to say, no, the reason why you did this is because you are deliberately targeting white nationalists. You don't care about targeting Islamic extremists or whatever.
Oh, no.
So, hold on. Isn't the swastika a religious symbol, at least to some people? Don't Hindus use it as a religious symbol?
Again, they just because this last bit was kind of like, again, this law was meant to like deal with like terrorist and in some instances criminal organizations to start off with. If you look at the beginning of this bill, all this stuff has been ham-fisted in sometime around June last year. So none of this is really conducive to the rest of the actual legal speech of the bill. It was. In fact, you'll find that there are some prohibited Arabic flags, and you might find a convergence of interests between banning Nazi symbolism and certain Arab flags.
You mean Arab flags that are influenced by certain European ideologies?
Oh, no. No, the Hamas flag is covered under this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm just saying that I don't buy the idea of trying to prevent religious encroachment, though, because let's just have a look at paragraph 2 of this section. So it says, each of the following is a prohibited Nazi symbol: the Nazi Hakenkreuz and the Nazi double sig rune, which is the SS symbol.
Yeah, the Schutzstaffel.
Yeah, so the Hakenkreuz, all right, that's the swastika. But notice they didn't actually say swastika. Why is that? Because Hindus do have a religious exemption here. So they were able to specify enough to say, all right, this version of the swastika is what we consider to be a prohibited Nazi symbol. So why couldn't they do that with the ISIS flag? Why couldn't they make the same kind of distinction? I don't buy it for a second here, because the swastika is a religious symbol too. So, as a result of that, they drew a distinction in the legislation. It's right there. Now, let's jump to paragraph 3. Each of the following is a prohibited terrorist organization symbol. Oh, wait, no, sorry. That's not the bit I wanted. So this is still on paragraph 2, sorry, but point C. Something that so nearly resembles a thing to which paragraph A or B applies that it is likely to be confused with or mistaken for that thing. All right, what they're talking about there is anything that looks like the Hakenkreuz or the SS rune is also a prohibited Nazi symbol if it is, meant to look like that, meant to give that impression. So here, I mean, I know some of the other wording is kind of very purposely ambiguous, but there I think it's actually very specific because they're being very careful to say, no. If you're drawing a Hakenkreuz or anything that's meant to look like one, then you're
a
in
little
trouble.
bit creative.
Yeah, but if you do a Hindu swastika, then you're okay. So here they've been very, very specific in order to draw those lines.
Return to tradition, re-embrace, was it like Indo-Aryanism?
Yeah, well, look, the other reason we're reading these out, guys, is sort of a public service. I know a lot of people are already aware of this stuff already because there's been a hell of a lot of chatter about it on Telegram. But yeah, like I said, like point C there, anything that resembles that thing. Remember, you've got to be so careful now. So if
that's things like Sonnenrads, that's things like, the Iron Grate from that one Romanian guy that I can't for the life of me remember right now. That's anything that looks like it. That's that South African tri-point one. That's the very creative stuff they do up in Scandinavia.
The Triskelion.
The Triskelion, that is anything that vaguely looks like it. And by the way, yes, they are going to be incredibly liberal with that.
Yeah, so be careful. Well, look, let's also, we haven't talked about what you're up for yet. So this is, if you get caught doing this, you're not up for just a fine or something. So I'll go through this other part. So where are we here? So the meaning of violent extremist material. Okay, this is the other thing that is outlawed here.
Is this subsection 5?
Let me just put it on.
Yeah, there we go. I've got another part of subsection 5. I don't know how to send it to you as well. This is the actual past version is not available on the internet. This is the one just before it. This is basically the only change is subsection 5.
Okay. Well, look, they've got here, I won't read all of this, but meaning of violent extremist material. Material is violent extremist if the material describes or depicts serious violence, provides instruction on engaging in serious violence, or supports or facilitates serious violence. Okay, it's that supports or facilitates part. That can be interpreted very, very widely. So this is an example of the legislation being purposely ambiguous to allow wiggle room to, say that even if you made some like pretty outlandish statements, but you didn't call for violence, you can still be interpreted as having done so. So it says a reasonable person would consider that in all the circumstances the material is intended to directly or indirectly advance a political, religious, or ideological cause. Okay?
Me being enthusiastic about grilled cheese is basically an ideological cause. Like what in human life cannot be brought under those banners?
Yeah. So there you go. That also would count as extremist material. A reasonable person would consider that in all the circumstances, the material is intended to assist, encourage, or induce a person to, and then all those ones I said before, engage in planning and all that stuff of a terrorist or a violent incident. Okay, now, what if you're caught doing any of this stuff?
Okay, you do have the updated version. I did send you the updated version. All right, so yeah, no, subsection 5. I'm sorry, can you just read that out?
Oh, okay.
Just back
Material
one.
is also violent extremist if it is reasonable to consider the material together with other material, and where all of the material to be taken to be a single item of material, it would constitute violent extremist material under subsection 1.
Just
So this is what.
think about that. Just think about that for a split fucking second. I'm allowed to piecemeal things you've said or material that you have, or things that are said maybe in public. I mean, they do include online broadcasting. I'm allowed to piecemeal it together, and also in this case retroactively, to make a case that you were dealing in violent extremist material.
Yeah, so it's like they're sort of putting together pieces of a puzzle that don't exist.
Yes,
If
that's
you
what they
just
did with the guys at Charlottesville. I'm sorry to step on your toes there, but yeah, that's quite literally what the lawyers' strategy was during the prosecution of people in Charlottesville. They couldn't get one thing, so they insinuated what they wanted by piecing together a whole bunch of other different things.
Right. So if you've just say, got a large collection of what they would call extremist material, we would simply just call it books and articles and whatnot. And they could just say, oh, well, look, there's a common theme here that they're advocating for white people, therefore they're advocating for genocide of non-whites. They'll say stuff like that. And they'll just say, well, he had this book, he had that book, he had this article, he had this video, whatever. Taken together, putting all of those pieces together means that it constitutes a single item of violent extremist material. And
say, for example, like you may or may not have read Mein Kampf and you're critical of Israel.
Yeah. And I mean,
there we go. That's enough. That is enough.
Right. So, and look, because of how wide-ranging these laws are, because this stuff pertains to the internet. We're going to after this, we're going to talk about what exactly a public place is. But because of this, we know that this is going to be tested in court probably pretty soon. Well, I mean, as you mentioned before, we've got some of the gestures are already going to be tested at the state level, but these laws are definitely going to be tested very, very soon, unfortunately. And it says, this is under 474.45b, that the penalty for accessing or accesses material or causes material or an electronic link that can be used to access material to be transmitted to the person, or transmits, makes available, publishes, distributes, advertises, blah, 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 the material, solicits material or an electronic link that can be used to access material. The person does so using a carriage service and the material is violent extremist material, you get 5 years in jail.
Yep.
Right.
Also, the criminal code that they're pulling the 5 years in jail from, there is a fine for it. I imagine they're going to deal this out very liberally. It's a $25,000 fine.
Damn.
That's the bottom end, $25K right off the bat. That's basically if you make the best case for yourself, you're still found guilty of it, but there's so much leniency, which by the way you're not going to get. You are never going to get that. It's still $25K right off the bat, and say you really fumbled that charisma check or something like that. It's 5 years and $25K. Good luck working that off.
Notice those two references to an electronic link. So basically, if someone sends you a URL and you click on it, or if you send someone a URL that, say, takes you to a page that, when taken together could look like violent extremist material, or could be implied to be so, well, that's it. You've broken the law. You've broken this section, and you're up for a 5-year in jail penalty. These are much worse than the kind of hate speech laws that we've had previously. Well, we still have them. 18C, what they've been doing at the states. But yeah, these ones, really do look like they're going to start doing what's been happening in the UK for quite a while now. When they throw podcasts.
I think this is worse than UK.
It could well be.
Yeah, we've
I'm
talked
just using them as a standard because they always seem to be kind of 5 years ahead of us on this kind of stuff.
Congratulations, we just fucking time leaped.
We really did. Yeah, we've certainly caught up with all of this. Oh,
Are we having a fun time yet?
What were you saying, Nozzy, about what was it? How ambiguous the laws are, and how broadly they can be interpreted.
So I was talking with some of the legal team. They're not my legal counsel. They were not giving me legal opinions. They were just giving me historical opinions. I just want to lay that out flat. Their opinion of this in a non-professional manner was it looked very similar to the start of 18C. So 18C originally was put together in such a way that it was super vague. Vilification had never been used in the Australian legal context. At that point, defamation and libel, common law things had been used. Vilification was a brand new term. Now we're getting this new legal term called violent extremist material that doesn't appear anywhere else. Now, 18C only became more manageable when vilification was actually boiled down to a hard definition, but that was only through the prosecution and suffering of people. I don't want to say this, but I think this law is pretty much going to go the same way.
You mean they'll start to define it more specifically once it's tested in court?
Yes.
But when that happens, though, I mean, okay, they might be able to define it specifically, but that doesn't mean it can't be broad-ranging, as I said before, that part that said even if it resembles one of the symbols, you can still be up for it. They might just be specific and name a whole bunch of different symbols.
Yeah.
I mean, specific doesn't necessarily mean narrow. It just means they will specifically name a lot of things that can fall under that section of the law. So yeah, I mean, I get the point you're making. You're trying to give a little bit of a white pill, but I don't know.
There's going to be a lot of suffering before this law gets solidified. I'll put it that way. A lot of edge cases. No
doubt. And by the way, this is just this is backing us into the corner even more, where they're policing us to a ridiculous level. And I'm not Fed posting, but, this is going to have consequences. When people do start to kind of take action when their speech is ripped away from them because they feel like there's nothing else to do. If you can't propagate a message or affect change with your words and your activism, well, what are you left with? So, all of this could backfire. Anyway, I wanted to go through section 80.2F of these laws. So this is a definition section where they talk about the meaning of displayed in a public place. You'd think that would be pretty straightforward, but not really. So a thing is displayed in a public place if it is capable of being seen by a member of the public who is in a public space. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. That's what we would imagine it to be. But then it goes this step further. A thing is also displayed in a public place if it is included in a document, including, for example, a newspaper, magazine, program, leaflet, or ticket, or a film, video, or television program that is available or distributed to the public or a section of the public. So
that does include streaming.
Right. That's what I was going to say there. All of those things, like a film, a video, a newspaper article, a leaflet, or whatever, all have are all in the electronic form as well, and can be shared, duplicated, etc., on the internet, online. So, yeah,
the state doesn't see a difference. Yeah, the state does not see a difference between, say, a streaming platform and Netflix.
Yeah. Right. So they've really, really kind of tried to be as broad as possible with these laws. And we just got to say, watch out, guys. If you got stuff that looks like the swastika or whatever, take it down. Don't someone a link that can take you to where there might be an image
Don't
of one.
try and sell it.
Oh, well, look, that's the other thing. It also does make reference to trading in terms of memorabilia, Nazi symbols again. So they don't get an exemption. They've only really made an exemption for the Hindu swastika. But, like we've got one guy in Perth who sells all of this World War II memorabilia. He's not our guy, okay? Like, he's certainly not a Nazi or anything like that. But he's been doing that stuff for decades. And, when I went to Europe ages ago, when I was backpacking, I remember seeing a lot of those shops around. Not in Germany, of course, but like I remember they were quite popular in Prague. So it's always sort of been, for the most part, unless they've got a huge cultural sensitivity for it, like they do in Germany, that you were able to separate the two. You were able to say be into collecting that kind of stuff, memorabilia, and not being a Nazi. Okay, that was actually like something you could do, something you could be. And there are people who kind of fit that category. Someone like Lemmy from Motorhead, for example, who often would, he'd wear stuff that was a little provocative, you could say. So did Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots. But yeah, Lemmy was a big collector of Third Reich memorabilia. And he wasn't a Nazi.
And fatty liver disease.
Well, he was 70 and holy shit, man. Like he lived he definitely lived the rock and roll lifestyle. So I think he was lucky to
switching, was it from Jack and Cokes to orange juices and vodka because of his diabetes? Because he got diabetes from Jack and Cokes.
I didn't know that, but that definitely sounds like him. Okay. Well, I think my rant on that is done. How about you, Nolsey? Anything else you want to add to that?
Simple statement. Stay safe. If you think it's going to be... don't take the risks. It's not worth it.
Yeah, you're better... you're more useful to the movement outside of jail than in it, Which is why I still say there's nothing cowardly about hiding your identity, because you're probably more value not being doxxed. And no, don't worry, Nolsey, this will not be a video.
Okay.
We'd both be screwed. No, not really.
Because I was dancing around there naked for a little bit.
All right. So, okay, we've still got a little bit on hate speech. And then, of course, we're going to discuss what has been described as the surge in anti-Semitism in Australia that has, not just spurred on these laws, but also all of the last-minute amendments and plans to go further, as we heard from Michaelia Cash, to have Jews reviewing the laws and saying, oh, you need to do this and this and this now because these laws still aren't adequate.
I do have a take on
that. The e-safety commissioner. Yes, we do have one. It's one of those bureaucrats that is paid about $250,000 a year to police the internet, essentially. So this is Commissioner Julie Inman Grant, and she is criticizing X, Twitter, for, saying that they had created a perfect storm for safety to be diminished. And she has cited the sacking of e-safety staff. Now, I got deja vu when I saw this story on the news this morning. because I was like, hold on, didn't we already hear all this stuff from Twitter? The reason why they're making a point of it now is because the eSafety Commission actually issued a legal notice to X seeking information on its online safety practices. X responded, giving all of the details specifically in terms of how they relate to the Australian sphere. So here's something that we learned from them. There was apparently only one Australian safety staff member who was working there before Elon Musk took it over. Only one. And now they've been sacked. They also said that 194 Australian accounts that were previously banned have been reinstated. Not mine.
Not mine either.
Yeah.
Nope.
So, I don't know what examples they've got here, but, I assume I would be in the extremist category.
Yeah, probably some loose-leaf conservatives that were banned for saying the wrong thing back in 2016.
Right. And I mean, isn't Elon Musk doing bloody tours of Israel and shit at the moment?
Yeah. They put a little baby bulletproof vest on him and made him look at an empty pram.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is they're obviously trying to work the number on him. We've got these new laws here in Australia at the bloody federal level. I think that X is going to probably give in here and hire at least one Australian safety staff member and, get back to kind of policing speech on there. There's actually very little talk about, say, things like cyberbullying. That is in a completely different realm. It's nothing like what we do at all. And that is actually something if we are going to have an e-safety commissioner, I think it's a ridiculous title and job to exist. But if we're going to have one, I mean, surely that should be what they're doing. Probably no one is more affected by this than teenage girls. Teenage girls getting called ugly on the internet and, other kind of sexual bullying is extremely traumatic. Remember that data we got on Instagram, for example?
Oh, God.
Where it was, I can't remember the percentages exactly, but it was basically around half of all teenage girls with mental health issues attributed it to Instagram because of bullying on there, right?
Yeah.
And Facebook tried to hide that data as well, by the way, on Meta.
Oh, dude, even my own sister, during the last couple of years of school, Jesus fucking Christ, I still remember the things I was saying to each other.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I should also point out, it's teenage girls doing it to other teenage girls, for the most part.
Yes. Oh, my fucking God, yeah, what the fuck?
Yeah, and it's bad. Now, so look, if you're going to police the internet or whatever, go after that stuff, all right? Stop all those bitchy little cat fights that always end in tears.
But I hold stock in a pharmaceutical company that sells antidepressants and SSRIs. How is my stock profile going to go up next quarter if these fucking teenage girls aren't being bullied into a state of mental distraught?
Yeah. And also, I don't think it's any surprise here, the timing of this. Like I said, I mean, how long ago did Elon Musk take over now? This was a while ago now, where he sacked all those staff and everything. I was like, is the ABC just sort of late to the game?
A year and a bit?
But yeah, it was. I was like, huh? Didn't all this stuff already happen? But no, it's the e-safety commissioner has just started to, launch this kind of public crusade against Elon Musk and X.
Well, they feel empowered because of the new laws that just the
right,
laws
that's
we
what I
literally
mean.
just talked about. Yeah, that's basically the sole reason.
Yeah. So they've got momentum here, and they feel like with that momentum they can just push further and further, be more and more draconian. So not only do you have harsh Commonwealth laws, you've also got big tech engaged in self-regulation due to public pressure. That's what we're probably going to have here. Now, also, Chris Minns, in New South Wales, we're going to talk about these Islamic preachers, these radical clerics in Western Sydney. But he's, of course, under increased pressure from the Jewish lobby to take stronger action, or at least enforce laws on the books to get these clerics on hate speech charges.
Yeah.
So he's basically saying that he is going to go further, because he said that it's he said basically that it's outrageous that some of these groups are forced to be in a position where they have to take their own legal action because the police won't. So he wants to get things moving so that when one of these clerics makes a speech like that, the cops can just march in straight away and arrest him.
Yeah,
Now, that'd be good if you put them on the boat back to Bagdanistan or whatever the hell they're from.
Don't worry, they'll be safely and quietly arrested and kept in this country, and their extended family will be left in their 5 people to a fucking bedroom house.
Yes.
But no, that entire premise was the crux behind, or the crux of that entire premise was that one pro-Palestinian rally outside of that synagogue, where the police were like, "We actually can't force these people to move on. They are not breaking the law." But then, yeah, they were. They followed the law to the letter, completely legal what they did.
Yeah, it was provocative, but so what?
But yeah, you can at least understand them, but no, it was either, I think it was the AJ. No, it was actually the Executive Council of Australian Jury. Forgive my tongue. Went and pressed legal action against the organisers of that protest.
Right. Yeah. So basically, and yeah, this shouldn't surprise any of our American listeners. Jury in Australia is extremely well funded and organised, and they get what they want. Just in case you thought that the Australian example was removed from America, look, it's not quite as bad as over there, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
It's good enough, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of provided enough examples thus far to demonstrate that. But yeah, I mean, what they've been doing is saying, well, okay, the government's not doing anything, the police aren't doing anything, well, we're going to have to take our own legal action. And they've got the funds, they've got the legal resources to do so. So they're absolutely going to do it. And the government kind of looks at it and says, oh, this is sort of bad publicity for us. I'd say it's not. I'd say it's just Jews actually kind of shaming themselves in the public. But nonetheless, I think the government interprets it as them coming up short in terms of law and order, and they want to play catch up.
In terms of an actual recent event in New York City, I imagine you know the one I'm talking about. Caught having illegal tunnels built, dangerously built without permits or anything, completely secret tunnels, and then they turn around. The shul turns around and says, "Oh, actually, we're the victims in this. We're the victims. The police barged in and they scared us and they terrified us, and it was these youngsters that did it without our knowledge. And oh God, can you please consider our feelings in this trying time?" No one in the public buys that, but unfortunately, the political class will.
Well, that's the playbook every time. I'm reading Gaza at the moment by Norman Finkelstein. The title is self-explanatory, but if you remember the flotilla of aid that went to Gaza, I think in 2010, they've sent the military, and it was like helicopters that came in. They dropped down on zip lines. They killed 9 people, and then they went on to say, "Oh, they started it." They said they attacked us first.
And by the way, this is self-admitted. This is self-admitted in a Israeli army propaganda video. Unit 8200, which is their online information warfare unit, literally said that we've got agents checking that Wikipedia page to make sure that Israel is not seen as the villain in the Gaza flota. The Arab, was it Gaza flotilla or was it the Arab flotilla?
I forget what it's called. I just always
The
call it flotilla.
Yeah, the flotilla. Either way, the flotilla. Like they are not seen as the bad guys in it. They literally have people 24/7 making sure that Wikipedia article or any information relating to it does not depict Israel as a villain there, even though they killed people giving humanitarian aid.
They did. And BB even said that the soldiers were courageous and were subject to a public smear campaign. Really?
Yeah, well.
Boarded a humanitarian vessel and killed 9 people. Anyway. Well, look. Let's jump into Israel and Gaza, in terms of how it's affecting Australia. So, the Australian Jewish Association, their chief executive, Robert Gregory, is saying that Qantas has been engaging in outrageous political activism. So, why is this? This is because one of the staff members on a Qantas flight was caught wearing a pin of the Palestinian flag. That was it.
Yeah.
It was that one thing. This apparently caused outrage. There must have been a Jew on board here because
no one else would have given a shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, several photos were taken of her. And she was accosted as well about it. And it just turned into this enormous story. It's amazing.
Jesus Christ, buddy. Just order a shot of many Chevets from the fucking air hostess and deal with it, all right?
Yeah, but that was it. And I'm sure this would be recorded as an anti-Semitic incident as well. So Mr. Gregory, Robert Gregory, he had this to say. If employees are found to be using their roles for political activism while passengers are essentially captive in the air, they should be dismissed.
Oh, God.
They're captive in the air. Yeah, it's called a flight, dude.
Yeah. You're in a fucking pressurized metal tube, buddy. This is part of the contract.
So he went on. He said these incidents aren't isolated and Qantas management should address the divisive political activism coming from their staff. So in other words, he's saying, there's other people at work who dare to wear a lapel badge of the Palestinian flag. I've got one right here. Ugh. I don't really wear it. I just kind of have it up in my room.
Where the fuck did you get that from?
I got it from one of those rallies. Someone gave it to me.
What?
Yeah, someone gave
me
one.
The fuck is my one?
Oh, jeez. Okay.
God damn. You're always getting all the good shit.
It's really not very, very special, man. It's probably worth it.
I know, but I could cause a fucking huge commotion on a flight now by wearing it.
All right, so talking about the BDS movement in Australia. So the company of choice to go after is Zim. So they operate in the shipyards, so the docks, the ports, and you do get Palestinian activists who go after them and try to disrupt the trade. Now, this is because they supply weaponry, but also other non-military goods to the Israeli army. So, I mean, these people take it one step further than activism and protests. They actually try to disrupt the flow of arms or the flow of resources to the Israeli army.
I still love how the US naval intervention has actually made the entire situation worse because they're now getting all these merchant vessels to cluster in the the Arab Gulf. It's like that's not a good idea, and you're losing the company money. And also, another big plus is all these merchant vessels, rather than waiting to be cleared by the US Navy, are literally just going around the Horn of Africa like it's the fucking 1800s again.
Right. But yeah, look on this on the BDS movement here. There's been several documents that have been circulating, and the Australian newspaper got hold of some of these. And they originally come from America. So there's an organization in America called Block the Boat, and it's really the same kind of tactics. How you can do as much as you can to disrupt trade without actually breaking the law. Something like the Sea Shepherd, I guess, kind of does something like that too, where they harass Japanese whalers and that. You get out into the ocean and there is some, stuff you can do, perhaps obnoxiously, but still legally.
We're going to throw a stink bomb at you.
Something like that. Was that on South Park?
No, that was actually Sea Shepherd. They were making fun of Sea Shepherd. The South Park joke came when the Japanese crew turned around and harpooned the fucking captain to the deck.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway. So it says, this is a toolkit for tracking ships owned by Israel Zim Shipping and offers a starting point for organizing a port blockade with the Block the Boat movement. So that's what one of the documents said. So it urges protesters to build relationships with unions and to use the trucking industry as a means of achieving their results.
Don't worry, sir. Sikh truck driver always delivered to Zim cargo shipping freighting industry.
So now there is an Australian version of Block the Boat, and it's called Block the Dock. So yeah, that is when you see these people out on jet skis and stuff disrupting Zim, that's who they are apparently. They are from Block the Dock. And no doubt we'll see more of them.
I'd love to see it here. Honestly, I'll bring some of the guys down to the beach and crack some beers and just watch a whole bunch of fucking Palestinian activists fuck around on jet skis. Might be a good day.
It might well be. Okay. Now, the Australian went on to talk about some other documents that were circulating. So these are not Block the Dock ones. These are ones, I guess you could say, that are a little bit more radical. So these are the ones where they're targeting, the intended audience is anti-Israel activists, unionists, educators, and it's for them to sabotage and vandalize property and to evade police by using encrypted communication. Now, this, of course, is illegal activity, so, we don't condone it on here. But, this is another example of the failed multicultural experiment here in Australia, where we've got, Muslims and Jews at each other's throats. And I suppose you probably got some white people involved in it too.
Yeah.
Because, they like joining these pro-Palestinian groups and saying that Israel is some kind of colonial white supremacist force. It's a European settlement that you have in the Middle East. And they wanted to actually team up with them.
I still fucking hated hearing that bullshit. God, I think our eyes collectively rolled into the fucking fifth dimension when we had that shit at the Palestinian protest.
Yeah. So look, I'll just read from this document. It says, do you agree with what non-violence means? Explore the concept of what violence means to you and whether that doesn't include topics like graffiti, sabotage, and property damage. Establish or adopt a set of principles, preferably written down for future reference and for new people who might join you. So yeah, look, it's not very explicit, as you can tell there.
Yeah.
Very kind of veiled language, but you could basically say that's what they're advocating is, kind of small scale property damage.
What, shit kegging?
What's that?
Way back in the day, one of the gyms that a guy had was shit kegged. They filled a keg up with shit and tried to pour it into the gym.
Okay. I've heard of people doing stuff like putting shit in letterboxes before, which is it's even on that show. Who's that? You know, that show that you're named after one of the characters.
Big Les.
Big Les, that's it. Didn't they have that on there where they did it to that poor Clarence guy? They put shit in his letterbox.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the only one I know. Okay. Oh, okay. So we heard about the 2 Australians who were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Lebanon. And, please remember, this is not just a Gaza-Israel conflict.
It has spread.
Yeah, there are exchanges of fire on the Lebanese border.
So 2 Western Sydneyites were killed?
Yeah. So the ABC, when they first announced this, they made no reference to any possible terrorist links that either of these 2 men would have had. And by the way, let me just read out the 2 very Australian names here. Ali and Ibrahim Bazi. I don't know if I'd call them Australian.
I think they come with a side of hummus.
So anyway, when this was first, the news of this first broke out, Hezbollah, which of course is the Shiite Lebanese militant organization, I guess you could say, actually said that one of them was a member of Hezbollah and that he rose to martyrdom when he was taken out in that airstrike. So the Jewish lobby were on this. They pounced on it and said, why did the ABC neglect to mention this? Well, they're actually saying that this information had been made available by Hezbollah on their Telegram channel. And they're basically saying that the ABC should have been aware of that.
Why the fuck is it always Telegram?
I didn't even know Hezbollah had a Telegram channel. I'm going to have to
Everyone
check.
has a fucking Telegram. Everyone has a fucking Telegram.
I guess. Did ISIS have one? Or do
Probably.
they have one?
Likely.
Probably.
I'm not going to fucking join it.
No, you need to be ever vigilant about where you're clicking and linking to now, don't you?
Like in this day and age, you're only three short clicks away from joining a terrorist organization.
Okay, so we've got people from the so-called hard left in Australia, where if you look at them broadly speaking, they're jumping in on being pro-Palestine and opposing what they always like calling the apartheid state of Israel. And, we would, of course, argue that if you did have a state of apartheid, the Palestinians would actually be much better off,
Yeah. Land, schools, institutions, the rest of it. Also, you wouldn't be fucking bombed into oblivion every decade.
What was the country that had the most amount of people wanting to move to it in the continent of Africa? It was South Africa.
Time period?
Well, yeah, not now, of course.
But, 50s and 60s, it was Rhodesia, and then 60 to 70s, 80s, it was South Africa. And now people are actually fleeing South Africa.
Rhodesia had their own form of apartheid as well. So.
Yeah, come here, we'll give you money, you can afford basic goods.
Yeah, but I mean, blacks in all of Africa were clamoring to get into Rhodesia, and then when that fell apart, into South Africa. They just had better systems.
I want to remind the entire audience that the Bantu are not even native to the bottom half of Africa. They're all from Central Africa. All of them.
Are they the kind of chinky-looking Africans?
No, those are the bush people. The bush people
Okay.
are actually native, but the bush people were like, oh, white people show up, bring industry, make us houses, give us food, give us livestock, and etc. And that they're the okay ones. They're the ones who actually agree with it and said like, yeah, we'll deal with this. The Bantu came down from Central Africa and ruined everything. Mandela was a Bantu.
So anyway, we've obviously spent a lot of time talking about the Indigenous voice to Parliament, and
Yeah.
to be frank, I'm glad we basically don't have to cover that story anymore. Not much of it.
I
But
still love
anyway,
seeing people on Twitter clinging onto it, hoping.
we we certainly did talk about the Jewish role in this, and there was a heavy Jewish role. Like probably the biggest player would have been Mark Liebler in
Yeah.
that. Randbot went on Tedious. I remember talking about that briefly.
Thank you for accrediting us.
He did credit us, didn't he? Even that joke we had about we would have supported if only full ploods were permitted to sit in the Indigenous voice.
Yeah.
But anyway, now with all of these hardline left Aboriginal activists seeming to line up behind the Palestinian cause, not all of them. Marcia Langdon, for example, is backing Israel.
It's only the non-sanctioned ones.
Yeah, or like the ones that don't have all of the Israeli lobby actually on their back, and in a lot of cases actually just paying them off to
That's actually
to
one
have
of
a
the
certain time.
things. I'm sorry to like again, step on your words there, but like there's one of the things I've been mulling in my head. Are they using these like weaponized Aboriginal activists as like baffles for the movement? Because you show up to a protest, and we've done it too. You see the Aboriginal activists. Do you see the fucking reactions the Arabs have to them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they a stifling method? That's something I've just been mulling around in my head with. I think even though like they're supporting Palestine, etc., but like they completely put a fucking stopper on all the enthusiasm. They suck the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah. Look, what we're getting at here is that I guess the Jewish lobby somewhat feels betrayed, or at least they feel that this is an investment that didn't bear much fruit. In that Aboriginal activists are tending to fall in behind the Palestinian cause here. So the Yes campaign leaders Sean Gordon and Mark Liebler said the movements are alienating the Jewish community from Indigenous gatherings. And it will also this here, which is almost like a threat, that it would deprive Aboriginal rights movement of much needed allies. Okay. They're basically
That is a
saying,
threat.
yeah, it's like, well, let's see how you do without us. Okay. And all our money that we've got behind your movement. So look, Australia Day, of course, is coming up. We got a bit of material on that too. But you've got so you're going to have your Invasion Day rallies across the country. The one in Sydney is going to have the Black Caucus, which I believe has Lydia Thorpe in it. And they are slated to not only be doing the usual Aboriginal I better not say that. The usual Aboriginal activism. But they're going to throw in all this pro-Palestine stuff too. And yeah, like I said, the Jews sort of feel betrayed by this.
But again, like, just my idea, like, who the fuck likes Lydia Thorpe? The Greens don't like Lydia Thorpe. No one likes Lydia Thorpe. She's a fucking pariah among all politics. So, like, why throw her in on pro-Palestine?
I know. Well, look, here's what she said here. She said she urges the government to cut ties with and impose sanctions on colonial apartheid Israel until Palestine is free.
Oh, and just for the new viewers, sorry, Lydia Thorpe is a woman who claims to be Aboriginal, to if you look at her
She is,
childhood
but
photos,
she's
there's
like
a
she's
lot.
like, quarter caste or whatever. She's
She's one of those like 1/64th Cherokee types.
and she sleeps in a tanning bed to make herself
Yeah.
look more Aboriginal.
If you look at child photos of her, she is literally whiter in those child photos than she is now.
Oh, you
No
even
one is
look
the
at
other
the
way
photos
around.
of her when she originally ran in the Victorian Parliament. Even there, as an adult woman, she was like significantly whiter.
Also, she's immensely unlikable. She was originally part of a far left Greens party. Got kicked out of that for like, I guess a minor disagreement on the voice, really, when it comes to terms with all of it. But yeah, no, she is an anathema to basically everyone, even the far left.
There's footage of her outside a strip club abusing a group of white men and calling them white cunts. All right.
Yeah.
Why wasn't she up on incitement or hate speech charges for that? Okay. So anyway, I'm just going to read a quote here from Sean Gordon. So this is a guy from a local Aboriginal land council. I believe he's Jewish. And he said, the Jewish community worked very hard to support Indigenous people through the referendum. People like, this was a mistake, he actually names the Jew here. People like Julian Lisa, Mark Liebler, Damien Freeman, those people worked tirelessly to support Indigenous people being recognised in the Constitution. I don't know where the Palestinian community stood in regards to that plight. I can tell you, through all the work I did, I wasn't aware of any Palestinian communities out there that were advocating for Indigenous constitutional recognition. I was well aware the Jewish community were, because I was standing side by side with them. Damien Freeman and Julian Lisa, I was working with them for more than 10 years on Indigenous recognition. Well, I guess he's kind of right there.
Yeah.
In that, yeah, like, Palestinian groups don't actually care about Aborigines. They don't. They care about Palestine. And, like...
For Arabs, this country isn't about, like, native rights or colonialism or imperialism. Like, when you actually
Australia's
boil
an
it down...
economic zone.
It is.
For diaspora populations to duke it out over their original ethnic conflicts.
Yes. This is a mercantile zone, unfortunately. God, it's even sad to say that.
Just grabbed a beer, because I'm an alcoholic Australian. With Irish blood, too. Just to educate the new listeners.
It means you can handle it better than most of the people on TRS have actually experienced when it comes to Australians.
Man, I don't know about that. When I've had drinks with my family members, that is Irish family members, actual Irish, Jesus, man, they can put away the piss, I tell you what. There is something to the stereotype. No, and it's not good. Anyway, let's talk more about anti-Semitism stuff. I guess sort of, look, it's still going to be somewhat related to Israel and Gaza. But anyway, not only do we have Invasion Day marches coming up, but yes, we've also got LGBT plus marches. So, Americans, you might find it funny that our Mardi Gras here is actually gay. We call it the Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras, and it's held each year in Sydney. It consists of like a number of, obviously people marching, but a number of floats as well that kind of represent different subgroups, most of which are, political in some sense. So, I might be saying this wrong.
Party.
Yeah, well, look, one of the groups involved, DayNU, I might be saying that wrong. I'm sorry. It's a Jewish group. Okay.
I was going to say, wasn't it meant to be Dick and You?
That would be more appropriate. Yeah. So anyway, they've had a float in that Mardi Gras for the past 24 years. But now they're reporting feelings of distress and a sense of isolation, which has been compounded by the conduct of a Mardi Gras offshoot group. That offshoot group is called Pride in Protest. Now, this group, it's, I'm sure, we all know about queers of Palestine and gays of Palestine, all that stuff. It's basically one of those groups. This is just a Sydney version.
Yeah. I still love that one video that circulated around Twitter with the Arab guy like filming himself and switching the camera over and filming the Queers for Palestine and filming himself shaking his head, and then the fucking like the Queers for Palestine dudes on that like plinth standing above like the marching protest, like getting like really like sweating it, just straight sweating it. That is a good video.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, we were just talking about Aborigines before. I mean, with Aborigines, they just don't care about them. But with gays, it's like, actually, no, they're just opposed to them. It goes beyond that. They do care, but they kind of care in the way that is bad for you. I would argue it's good.
Yeah.
So anyway, they Pride in Protest wrote this open letter to Albanese, our Australian Prime Minister, calling for a permanent ceasefire in Palestine. So they said this indicates the impact of our campaign on this front, announcing that, oh man, they are going to be marching with another group called Trans Pride Not Genocide. So that's going to be another float.
That's the one thing I fucking hate about like the concept of homosexuality as a fifth column, is that they treat political movements and ones with serious, and don't call me a humanitarian, but like serious human damage being done. They treat them like wallpaper and trends, or like books to put on your coffee table. That's one of the things I genuinely fucking hate. If you're going to support something, do it full-heartedly.
Right. So these two groups, and I guess you could perhaps say the inclinations of anyone involved in the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras, because I mean it's all political to an extent. Is that I hate to say it, but they're, yes, for the most part pro-Palestine, or at least they just signal that way, or none of them essentially understand the concept, though.
The same way that like an upper middle class person like treats the books on his coffee table, as I just said, it's all window dressing.
Yeah,
there is no spirit, no true enthusiasm, nothing for it.
They seem to think that Israel is actually, you know who just recently died? John Pilger. It was sort of, it did, I don't know why, but it didn't really kind of make the news rounds because it was like a week ago now, I think. But anyway, I remember John Pilger used to describe Israel as America's deputy sheriff in the Middle East, right? He said that was kind of
a real Trump's.
Yeah, so it was like, oh, yeah, they're this pawn in the Middle East that America uses to keep the Arab states in check, which is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, if you talk to these kind of activists, that's the kind of thing they say. And that's why, like, I have to disagree with Mike Enoch when he says that anti-Zionism is necessarily anti-Semitism. It's not for these people. They genuinely are not like anti-Semitic because they either refuse or they just don't believe because they're too stupid and they read too much John Pilger. Most of them don't even go that far. That this is not anything to do with Jewishness or Jewish culture or even Jewish identity. They see it as something completely different. And a lot of the
applying of level of knowledge there that does not actually exist.
Yeah,
that's the main problem with their take is like assuming these people actually know what the fuck they're talking about. They do not.
Right. So while they may be mistaken in their conclusions, and I absolutely would say that, I would not say that it's anti-Semitism because they're just not. And in fact, when they cite their arguments, they very often cite Jews like Noam Chomsky. And, you can't say that they hate him. Anyway.
Or know what the fuck he is.
Yeah. This DANU group, so this is the Jewish group who have had the float at the Mardi Gras for the past 24 years. So they put out a statement. Here's an excerpt from it. At a time when our members are reporting feelings of distress and a sense of isolation from the LGBT alphabet soup community and the wider community, it is disappointing that Mardi Gras did not reach out to DANU prior to posting an open letter to the Prime Minister. DANU would like to remind our LGBT blah group community that Israel offers sanctuary and continues to offer sanctuary to members of our community fleeing oppression and indeed the death penalty at the hands of the internationally recognized terrorist group Hamas within Palestine. So there you go. Israel takes in Palestine's gays while Hamas subjects them to the death penalty.
Thumbs up.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about those preachers. We've already sort of gone over this a bit, so we'll make this bit brief. So these, you had Sheikh Ahmed Zaud, I think was one of them. Where's the other guy? I don't know. Anyway, there was two. I'm sorry I don't have the other name on hand here.
Just make a permutation of something with Muhammad.
Yes, something like that.
Something Muhammad. It'll probably work out.
Oh, wait. No, it's a guy called Brother Ismail.
Ismail. Oh, there we go.
I don't think it's his real name. So these two preachers were actually, Maraki mentioned some of this. They did do some sermons where they referred to Jews as being descended from pigs and monkeys, I believe was one of them. Basically,
why are they crawling out of the sewers then?
Yeah, they are. They quite literally are now. I've seen a lot of cartoons at the moment with the Ninja Turtles and Mario and that.
I've seen them all too.
Yeah. So David Sharma, who is the former Australian ambassador to Israel.
Heroes in a skull cap. Sorry.
David Sharma is back in the Senate, by the way. He was formerly the member for Wentworth, wasn't it? I hope I'm getting that right.
I believe it
one
is
one of the teal seats, anyway. But he's in the Senate now. After they had to have a replacement. And wow, man, he's really been doing. He's been lapping all this stuff up. He's been doing the rounds. He's been doing the media, talking about this stuff. And he said, is this really the sort of Australia Anthony Albanese and Chris Minns want to live in, where speech demonizing religious minorities is allowed to pass unchallenged? He refers to Jews as simply a religious minority. They both talk a lot about social cohesion, but they are failing the most fundamental tests of leadership in allowing anti-Semitism like this to run unchecked. Now, I don't think that it'd be hard to find a greater example of the failure of multiculturalism than right there. I mean, when he says there that, in order to maintain social cohesion, you've got to shut people up. Essentially what you're doing is saying, people are having these thoughts. They're thinking, I hate this person, I hate this, and I hate this group. I don't like this group and I wish they didn't live here or they weren't doing this or whatever it is. So when people think like that, you have to stop them from expressing it. Okay? That is not a functional multicultural society. Okay? That is an example of social cohesion completely and utterly broken down. Okay? And now we're in this ridiculous state where when we suddenly realize that, when we realize that all of these groups living in the same land put together don't like each other, well, then we need to actually go down the authoritarian route to stop people from brawling in the streets. Because, I don't doubt that fiery rhetoric coming from religious and political leaders can sometimes lead to stuff like that. It can happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, what they're doing now is looking on and kind of seeing something like that breaking out here. So that means, what do? You have to police people's speech. And that's why, multicultural experiments, they either completely fail or they have to be extremely repressive.
Singapore.
Like Singapore, yes.
Yep.
I mean, they're often referred to as like a soft authoritarian.
Dude,
I would actually,
when your law books can fill an entire fucking library.
Yeah, I would say they're actually pretty extreme. It's just that everyone is so shit scared of breaking the law that they dare don't. They just don't.
Well, again, like talking about like Australia being in an economic zone because like we've lost the identity of the Australian, because like an Australian can be anything these days. Singapore is purely, and has been for hundreds of years at this point, an economic zone. It's a port city. That's what it's there for. You're not there to live. You're not there to raise a family. There's no Singaporean identity. You're there to make money. That's it.
Yeah, I watched a video that had a Singaporean white boy who spoke Singlish. That's like the bastardization of English in Singapore. And he had like a Singapore accent. It was amazing. It's, because, it's common enough for like Asians to come over and, get an American accent, get an Australian accent, but it, it never really happens in reverse. Singapore is one of those rare examples where it does happen, where, it was probably his dad was like, some engineer or whatever, and he got a good gig in Singapore. The family moved there. And holy shit, his white kids like develop a Singapore accent.
It's jarring, but I've seen it too. I've seen it in person.
Oh, you've seen it, have you? Okay.
Yeah, I've been to Singapore a handful of times. But yeah, it's jarring.
I've never had any desire to go there either. It's like I've got no interest.
The airport is nice.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, but the rest of it is depressing. It's like Kowloon, but like watered down Kowloon.
The worst I've ever been in was Gatwick Airport in London, and that I still thought that was pretty damn chaotic. I know it's not as bad as Heathrow, but fuck, it was still pretty bad. Anyway,
continuing.
All right, so Brother Ismail. So this is a guy who previously called for jihad, although, that word's always up for interpretation. He said that ASIO and counter-terrorism squads have visited him. Because there's been
same.
And he's criticized other Islamic leaders for not standing up for him and, I guess being as radical as he is. Now, this guy gave a sermon before New Year's Eve. He claimed that New Year's Eve was a Judaic tradition, and that the event was instead a day of circumcision. Right? So he said, is the quote, "In essence, I'm sorry to say this, you are celebrating on New Year's Eve a piece of foreskin. How low can the Muslim community stoop that we are celebrating a piece of flesh that is cut and thrown away?" Well,
does he have like a historical backing for this? Because
as I understand,
like the current year calendar and etc. was like born slightly before Rome, then obviously like kind of bastardized by Rome. I don't get where the Jewish part comes in.
Yeah, or it being a celebration of circumcision.
I mean, that may like base assumptions on this, but also, like, I guess that's the overarching question, I guess. I don't fucking know. Where the fuck does this shit come from? My brother Ishmael spent too much time on the shisha, put it that way.
Okay. All right, let's move on. We've got some other stories. So, cabinet papers. We had a fresh batch released recently. A lot of these date back to the early 2000s when the Iraq War was going on and, about to start as well. And it turns out that, look, like every few years, those cabinet papers have to be submitted where they go to the Australian archives, and then, of course, they're made publicly available. They're usually heavily redacted as well first. That's why a few years have got to pass before that, but also, the documents are very carefully looked over so that they can redact any kind of sensitive material. So anyway, it turns out with like the last batch that were due, when Scott Morrison, our previous Liberal Party Prime Minister, was in office, he actually failed to submit 78 cabinet records. They were not transferred to the Australian National Archives. And all 78 of those records, I believe it was all 78, were all to do with the Iraq War. So something's fishy is actually going on there. So the ministers who were, kind of heavily involved in Australia's commitment to that war, which I believe should mean they should be tried for war crimes. But anyway, it's people like Alexander Downer, Robert Hill, and Big Johnny Howard himself have all actually said that they support the release of those documents. Anthony Albanese...
We're never going to really get them.
Yeah, well, look, Albanese has said that he agrees, of course. He says they should have been available. They were able to get them, by the way. Once they realized there was sort of this glaring omission, they chased them up and they were able to get them. But Albo has announced an inquiry that is due to report soon as to why exactly it was that Scott Morrison's government failed to hand over those 78 cabinet documents. So, obviously, we're going to have to wait, see what that inquiry says. If you trust an internal government inquiry, I don't particularly have much stock in that. But I've just this is purely anecdotal here, but just the conversations I've had. People will say, "Oh, look, has it got anything to do with maybe, what's going on in the Middle East right now?" I'd say probably not. Look, for one thing, these documents, remember, were supposed to be handed over about 3 years ago by Scott Morrison's government. And
look, you can go out to your local fucking pub right now and ask people like, "Hey, why we're in the Middle East?" and you'll get like 5 or 6 responses. But ultimately, the public has figured out to some degree of actual enlightenment on the issue what was the case. We're only looking for vindication, not information here.
Yeah, well, look, we do have to remember that the Morrison government definitely, just like any Australian government, but I think they amped it up a little bit in the Morrison government, wanted to appeal to the Jewish community. And it's because of that key seat of Wentworth, right? So those who don't know, Wentworth is an electorate in New South Wales that has the highest Jewish population in the country. There are more Jews in Victoria and Melbourne, but in terms of just an electorate, Wentworth has the most.
It's like Israel versus the US.
Yeah. It's also one of the most affluent electorates you've got in the country. Hell of a lot of rich people there. Solidly liberal for many years. And then it was taken by Karen Phelps, who is a lesbian convert to Judaism, right? Then you had another election. Dave Sharma got in, the former Israeli ambassador, or ambassador to Israel. And then later on, you had the Teals take that. I don't think. Why doesn't I'm sorry, the name escapes me as to the Teal that holds Wentworth at the moment, but I don't think she would be a she. Yeah, is Jewish, but nonetheless, they were always fighting this on Jewish issues because I don't think it was any coincidence that when all this stuff to do with Wentworth was going on, Scott Morrison backed Donald Trump's call for Jerusalem to be the Israeli capital.
Yeah.
And accordingly, for us to back that support up with moving the Australian embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Scott Morrison was actually accused at the time by even people in the mainstream media of trying to kind of like cynically appeal to Jewish voters for doing so. And then it's funny, you know, later on, once they lost Wentworth, that was just dropped. They don't really care about it now. And of course, we've got a radical Nazbol government now as well, of course, that hates Jews, apparently.
Oh yeah, totally. So like, what did they wheel Eric Stryker up to the fucking podium?
All right. Oh, well, okay. Just concluding comment on those cabinet records, because I went on a tangent there. But what I was trying to say was, look, we all know obviously there's a huge Israeli and Jewish angle when it comes to why we all participated in that horrific war, and I'm thinking that maybe some of those cabinet papers were going to reveal information of that kind. Because even though, you know, right now, obviously, Israel's going through worse PR than what they were 3 years ago, nonetheless, they're always trying to play games like this, aren't they? Where they're trying to play hard and loose with the truth, essentially. And there's certain things they don't want you reading. Like
that one quote from that one spinny little man, like, they lie and they lie and they lie and lie until it becomes a truth. He wasn't referencing his own party in that quote. He was referencing a third party. Guess which one?
Which?
I'm not fucking saying it.
All right. Okay, well, look, let's move on to immigration, refugees, that kind of stuff. So the number of permanent residents in Australia who are passing citizenship tests is plunging under the Albanese government. Now, current Labor government that's been in power for nearly 2 years.
Pleased to be taking tests, sir.
The opposition, the coalition, is accusing Labor of neglecting to teach citizens what it means to be Australian. I'm not sure if the citizenship test really does that. So if you don't know what's in this, here's what it is, right? This is what you have to do to become an Australian citizen after you've been like a permanent resident here for a number of years. So you get 20 multiple choice questions, which are on freedom of speech, the importance of democracy and the rule of law. You are required to correctly answer 5 questions on Australian values. And overall, you've got to get a pass mark of 75% or above. And by the way, like with the preparation material that you can access, they essentially tell you all the answers. You know, it's like you get to look at
it's like a driving test
before you take the test.
It's like a fucking like construction certificate or some shit like that. Like they basically detail out like, hey, look, this is what's going to be on the test. So just memorize this shit. And also, here's the test. Oh, you failed. Oh, let's give you another chance real quickly. Are you sure about this answer? I mean, I can bring up the slide again. You know.
Yeah. So despite all of that, they're still not passing the fucking test. Okay, so I'll give you the numbers here. So the government data shows the pass rate under the current government has fallen to 65%, compared to around 80% under the previous coalition government. And since the May election, 288,603 citizenship tests were administered, with 187,574 having passed. Now, first of all, I'd say I don't really care, because that's not going to get rid of those people. Be good if it did, pass this test or you're fucking out. But that's not going to happen. A lot of people, when it comes to citizenship, they get really complacent. And you know this from people who end up getting, their citizenship taken away. Oh, sorry, not their citizenship taken away, but their visa taken away, because they've just been a permanent resident for so long. And they're just like, oh, well, I'm just going to stay here on that visa. Nolsey has dropped out there, so I'll just keep talking. I'm sure he'll come back. Oh, wait, there he is now. Welcome back, Nolsey.
Allow access to my camera, and I was just like, what's going on? So it just kicked me out when I said no. All right.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of people just don't bother getting a citizenship, because once you're a permanent resident, you're entitled to all the same rights that a citizenship has. So the only thing really is, like I said, maybe you run the risk of your visa being cancelled. That's all. But if you're law-abiding, that's not going to happen. So, all of this doesn't really matter. But what I would say, though, is that more than sort of showing that immigrants are now failing in their civic responsibilities or civic knowledge of Australia, what it means to be Australian, our values, etc. I think much more this actually... Well, doesn't this just simply show we're getting more stupid people?
Oh, yeah. Because, again, I think we've actually covered this before. Back in the day, the Indian migrants were at least of the higher caste and etc. At least, right. Business people, upper middle class.
We're getting the untouchables now.
Yes, we are. We're getting the fucking Dravidians. Although we do already have Dravidians, or the Dravidians' more retarded cousins. But yeah, no, we're actually getting waves of Dravidians.
Yeah, because look, a citizenship test is not a test on whether you fulfill your civic responsibilities to be an Australian. A citizenship test is simply can you read the cheat sheet and then get the score?
Can you not be retarded for 5 minutes?
Yes. So the fact that you've got nearly half these people failing it shows that, oh my God, man, you can't answer a very simple 20-question multiple choice test where we give you the answers beforehand. We're now importing retards. And yes, I mean, India is our country where we source the vast majority of our immigration from now. And we are not getting the Brahmin class exclusively anymore. We're getting every shitty caste.
We're getting the Sadran, we're getting the Metais, we're getting fucking Dravidians.
Yeah, we're getting a lot. All right, so on refugees...
Hey, but what about the street food?
So all those people who were let out of indefinite detention after the High Court ruling, there was around 100, I believe, possibly more. The High Court ruled that indefinite detention was not lawful. So this applies to, say, people who our government wants to deport, but the country we want to deport them to is not accepting them. So that person is left in a state of legal limbo, and we just keep them in indefinite detention while we try to figure out something else to do with them. So they were all released, but a hell of a lot of them have gone back in the slammer now.
Mostly what for?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go through one example here. So yeah, a lot of them, what they did was, a lot of them were in there because they had committed very serious criminal acts. One of them is this man. So Aliwa Yawari, I thought this guy was Asian when I saw him the first time. Apparently he is Iranian, though. So this is a guy who was charged with 2 counts of indecent assault. So that's sexual assault. And that is what was on his criminal record beforehand as well. What a surprise, as soon as he's released, he goes out and he does it again. And there were many examples of this. And I didn't see one example of a white person, by the way. Not one. So anyway, he's back in jail. He's currently being remanded. And, we do have an updated number here. It was 148 people who were released. You remember the time we were told it was like 80? Do you remember that when we covered this before? It was like 80
and then
people.
like it was like, oh, there's 80 people released, and by the way, we actually had to take 3 of them back to jail for soliciting fucking sex with children.
Yeah, and like all the stuff that they had previously been convicted of, once released, like within a matter of fucking days, they were out there doing it all again. Extremely triggering. And now apparently this guy is complaining about his health. He's got bad health problems, and he's trying to play the sympathy card.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and one of those incidents, by the way, involved this guy at a motel in Adelaide. And this guy apparently likes them old. He goes after old women.
Oh, and this one, yeah.
Yeah, and there was also, like, I don't know if you saw an Aboriginal, like, it looked like he broke into an aged care home recently and raped, like, a 75-year-old woman. That just blows my mind.
I wish I didn't know that information, to be honest. Yeah,
so do I.
These days I just try and keep my cool. Try and play it cool. But yeah, that kind of information, it challenges even the best of minds.
Okay, so just a quick story on national security. We've had our first major cyber attack on a court in Australia. So this was on the Victoria's court system. So
aren't we a bad news show?
Where we're exclusively a bad news show.
But this is good news.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you're talking about the most corrupt and immoral jurisdiction in the country. I guess you could say that. But anyway, it was on the the Victorian court system at the state level, and here's the information that we've got. It's apparently Russian ransomware. So this led to a hack of access of video and audio recordings from multiple Victorian courts, including the highest court. They accessed recordings from the Supreme Court, including the Supreme Court of Appeal. And it's the first attack of its kind. And but apparently this kind of stuff has happened a lot overseas. So even international criminal courts like The Hague have actually been targeted. So they typically go in, download a shitload of what could be sensitive data. And I guess, because they say this is Russian ransomware, they then go and ask for a payment so that they don't go and then release that sensitive data.
But there's only a few instances when I think a court should be sequestered from the public. And honestly, after looking at the grand total of instances where our guys' court cases have been sequestered from the public, I'm starting to think the court should be a little bit more open.
Maybe. All right, let's move on to climate and energy here. So we have a lot of we've had increased regulation of our energy market here in Australia. This is sort of part of the desperation of government to keep the cost of living pressures under control, because inflation has been horrific, particularly here in Western Australia. Although, they do say it's coming back down now. I believe the current rate is 4.3%, which is better than the high numbers we've seen before. But anyway, part of that regulation on the energy sector is things like price caps. So what they refer to as the default electricity bill. So with a lot of power companies facing increased costs and the costs of solar tariffs, a lot of these groups, through their lobbying of the government, are pleading with the government to increase the default electricity bill. In other words, they want to charge consumers more to kind of offset these increased costs that they've got. So it's the Australian Energy Regulator that sets that.
AMO, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And a lot of it is to do with these increased costs and everything. It's to do with people. A lot of people are switching over to solar.
Oh, dude, they fucking charge me $28 or 28 cents a kilowatt, and then they sell my fucking kilowatt hour, and they pay me like fucking 2 cents for it. So get fucked.
Right. And
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are actually trying to avoid the increases in their bill by investing in these solar panels, sticking them on their roofs and everything.
Yeah.
And the rate of people doing that is actually much, much higher now, even though it really, I don't know if it ends up being cost effective for them. Maybe in some cases.
It's very specific, and it has to be small scale. For example, I paid about $6,000 Australian for my unit, and my previous bill was 900 and something. Now it's about 400 and something. But the thing is, like, again, like, it's only if you run your appliances during the day that you're actually making money on it.
Right.
I set my washer and dryer to run during the middle of the day, and don't even talk about winter.
Yeah,
Also,
but it's funny though, like,
people say, like, oh, just get a battery. Get a battery. It's like, dude, a battery is $10,000, and its own fucking cradle to grave cycle will not pay for it.
But I mean, the other like ironic thing is that to the extent that solar energy might help you save money on your power bill, is caused pretty much exclusively by green tyranny. The fact that we've had so much meddling and so much investment in green energy and the shutting down of coal-fired stations and mines, that we have driven power prices through the roof. And only then at that stage, that state of inflated prices, does solar start to look more affordable.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And quite literally, that was my motivation too.
Yeah, because your prices have just gone up that much. Whereas if we actually left the market alone, and here, I pretty much am. I mean, I have nothing against like state governments owning power companies. I've got no problem in that. But I do have a problem with all the government meddling when it comes to green energy. I definitely have a problem with that.
I love the government not run by retards and ideologues. And people who have invested industrialist interests that are outside of the government's purview or the purview of the interests of the people in the country. Now, that's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so one of the other regulations of the energy industry is Labor's coal price cap. So that, I believe, is due to continue until mid this year, 2024. So some people, and by the way, what that does is that caps coal by $125 a ton. So you can't like charge any more than that. So you do have the national senator, Matt Canavan, is saying, do we really need to actually continue to do this? Because by doing this, we're denying a lot of these coal companies, energy companies, decent profit margins. But also at the same time here, remember that the government is actually bailing them out too. So they say, okay, look, you can't charge any more than $125 a ton. And to make up for all of that profit that you would have otherwise made if the price cap didn't exist, we're actually just going to subsidize you. We're going to pay you off. So Canavan is also saying, well, look, we can't afford this anymore. Just let them go back to making a profit, and then we don't have to keep subsidizing them. And yeah, I think I agree with that. It seems stupid.
Yeah. Not much more to say on that.
Okay, now here was probably my favorite climate story of the week. And that is that our environment minister is Tanya Plibersek. She's our federal environment minister. And she has vetoed Victoria's offshore wind farm that was set to be constructed very, very soon. This is a project that was valued up to $1.4 billion. And the reason why this is kind of funny is because we're talking about a federal Labor government intervening to stop a state Labor government. So they're obviously not totally united on all of this. Now, they're citing risks to local wetlands. And in particular, apparently there was a recent study done. So on these offshore sites where they were going to build these large wind turbines, there are a number of birds there, and they're how do you say? Is it migratory? Is that how you describe the ones that always like go long distances and that?
Yeah, migratory.
Migratory birds. Apparently, they found like species that they weren't aware of before they were accessing those areas of land.
Oh God!
And they're on the endangered species list, right? And yes, birds do sometimes fly into the turbines and kill themselves as a result.
Air is sticky.
Yeah. So the federal government was aware of those new findings and just the other risks to environmental degradation there. So they stepped in and said, no, you can't do it. You're going to have to build those wind farms somewhere else. And the other reason I find this funny is because, like, environmentalists are the exact same people who say we should be converting to green energy and building more wind turbines. But at the same time, you can't upset the birds. So you're really kind of stuck in a dilemma there, aren't you? You want both of those things, but you can't have both.
Oh, yeah. Also, you also can't have reasonable energy prices while doing it.
No, definitely not. And what was funny about this was Jacinta Allen, who is the Premier of Victoria. She actually did a press conference talking about the project and how it was going ahead, even though the decision from Tanya Plibersek had been made publicly available. She was not aware of it. So Tanya Plibersek did not call her beforehand and give her a heads up on it. So some kind of bad strategy there by federal Labor for not actually informing the counterpart that was going on. She's like, "Oh, really? What?
God.
It's not happening." Okay, so a lot of these green energy projects, they're complaining about a lack of enough people, enough labor to be able to build them. And, we do have a skills gap in Australia. You do not have to plug that gap with lots of immigrants. There's plenty of other ways to do it.
It's called TAFE.
Yeah. Stop encouraging everyone to go to uni and get them to go to TAFE instead. Anyway, I won't go into that rant again. But anyway, this is specifically to do with training the next generation of clean energy technicians. So the skills minister, who is Brendan O'Connor, oh my God, he's launched a plea for women to enter technical trades to fill the skills gap. So he declared that the worker shortage made it unacceptable on equity and economic grounds that the trades continue to be male-dominated. Right? So that's the other angle, isn't it, as well? So even with the bloody fucking influx of, what was probably around 600,000 people in the last year, they still have this skills gap.
I can't get my slaves for cheap enough.
Right. So now they're actually appealing to the female population. And I mean, you do.
God, it's like fucking post World War II all over again.
I don't know about you, but like when I've driven past like roadworks or construction sites or something like that, I am increasingly seeing females working there, like particularly traffic control.
Yep.
Have you noticed that's someone from where Pink Hive is?
Yep.
So it's happening. It's definitely happening.
Well, that's been happening for a hot minute now, buddy. That's been happening since about 2006.
Yeah, it has. So, but not enough, according to Brendan O'Connor. It is not enough. So he's launched the New Energy Apprenticeships program. So that offers support to 10,000 apprenticeships in the clean energy sector. But so far, there's only 1,787 participants. That initiative was launched a year ago. So they've, what's that? They've barely, not even 20%. Damn. Some bad numbers, guys.
God. Your subversive program is not performing as well as you'd like it to, wouldn't it?
No. So we also had a protest on the first day of... We're going to have a protest on the first day because, of course, Parliament is not back. All the suits in Canberra are back to work, of course, but Parliament will not resume until February 6th. And when that happens, you're going to have people from the Hunter and Illawarra electorates. They're two regional areas in New South Wales. So Hunter's sort of semi-regional, I guess. And they're going to be coming to Canberra to protest more green energy projects. The reason why it is these two electorates in particular is because this is where they're going to be constructing those... Nolsey might have to fill in the gaps here. Those power conducting lines, whatever it is.
HAV lines.
Yeah, that's it. And, regional Victoria is also very, very heavily affected by this. So, basically all of the large-scale infrastructure that can deplete property value and cause environmental hazards and everything like that, they are well and truly built away from urban and suburban areas, and they go out and, they stick it to those old hillbillies who dare to live in a regional town and make things
Try that
work.
in a small town. Oh, wait.
Yeah. So all the inner city Greens who vote for this kind of stuff, they never have to see, these bloody green energy monstrosities in their own backyard. So good. These people are coming out and they're going to protest at Parliament over this. And they bloody well should.
Yeah. Good. Hope they spray manure on it.
Okay, and just quickly, the coalition is still not committing to a 2035 emissions reduction target. They have committed, of course, to a 2050 target, which is, 100%. Offsetting, that is, it doesn't mean you'll get zero emissions, but you'll be in a carbon neutral society.
God.
Anyway, Labor has its own targets. The Greens have their own targets. The Greens always have those utopian ones. They even said, they really preferably would like to get 100% carbon neutral by 2035, which is just lunacy. But today, Dutton came out and said no. He said he would be the one who would ultimately make the decision on this. And so far, no, he's not giving into this. Maybe he's actually growing a bit of spine in regards to all of this. It would be much better. Well, I mean, look, if he really was to grow spine, he would do what Matt Canavan did, who, of course, has to linger on the backbench because of his position here, and that is to scrap the coalition's 2050 target. If Dutton were to do that, then I would credit him for growing a spine, but he won't. He won't do that. All right, so we'll move on to IR. Again, quick stories here. So the nurses' union I believe this was just in WA, in our state. They have accepted a pay offer here. You know how much?
Still not happy.
No, they shouldn't be. So it's 3% per annum. 3%. The inflation rate now, only the official one, federally anyway, because it's probably going to be higher in WA. We usually have the highest rate of inflation out of any jurisdiction in the country. But anyway, the national rate is 4.3%. So even by the new rate, which has fallen quite a bit from whatever peak inflation was, I reckon it was probably around 10%. This pay rise that they're getting, if you can call it that, is not even in line with the new updated lower inflation rate of 4.3%. So in relative terms, it is still a pay cut.
I'm still having to support a fucking nurse like she's a welfare recipient.
I mean, nurses did just come out of the pandemic as well, and they had a fucking bitch of a job to do with all of that. So... All right, so the award system. This is sort of like our complex minimum wage system in Australia. We don't kind of have just like one minimum wage like in America. We have a system that kind of looks at different parts of the economy, different industries, and says, okay, you must have a minimum wage of this for this industry, this for this industry. And the Business Council of Australia has responded to the criticism of Tony Burke for... we've documented a few of these examples of wage underpayment, wage theft, that I guess you could call it. I think that's a better term. And new laws have come into effect. I believe they came into effect. Passed last year, making wage theft a crime. So not only is it something that you're not allowed to do, but you can prosecute someone under the criminal code for it. So.
At least something good under the criminal code.
Yeah. Now, as we've covered before, a lot of this is just like illegal immigrants who are in a precarious position. They don't want to speak out about their underpayment because they'll end up on a flight back home.
Yep.
But no, the Business Council of Australia, they actually have their own reason for that, and that is the complexity of the award system. So they're saying that...
Real fucking simple to navigate unless you want to fucking cheat someone.
Yeah. So look, there are currently 121 award categories. So, different minimum wages basically for different sectors of the economy. They're saying that all of those rules and that need to be rewritten so they're clear, easy to understand, and in plain English, so employers and employees are aware of their responsibilities and entitlements, and that the examples of staff underpayment that have been brought to light are, quote, very often the result of unintended errors due to the complexity of the awards. No.
Yeah, fuck off.
No, I mean, okay, like I would believe you if you could say, all right, this person got paid this amount because they thought the award wage was X, because in this other sector of the economy, that's what the award rate is. And they just got confused, they got mixed up, and they paid the wrong award. I would grant it then. But no, wage underpayment typically is done by stuff like cash handbacks, where they're paid the proper amount, and then the poor boat person has to then hand back a certain amount of that money in cash so that it's off the record. There's no record of that underpayment having ever existed. That's got nothing to do with the complexity of the award system.
Error, no. Complexity, yes. But complexity in what regard? The complexity of the scheme you're trying to fuck them over with?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't doubt that it is complex, by the way. I mean, yeah, having 121 award categories, yeah, definitely.
Dude, there's literally fucking like cheap specialists you can hire to figure out what your employee is fucking owed for this stuff.
Of course.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's out there, it's available. They choose not to do it. In fact, they'll even lie. In this case, I know about nurses been lied to about overtime.
Yeah.
Do they take it up? No, because they want their position in the fucking hospital.
Right. So, yeah, I can't say I agree with the business council here. They're just trying to make excuses. They know that, people who represent, companies that the business council represent have been guilty of engaging in all of this. And they're just trying to find some excuse, saying, oh, your laws are too complex.
They're like Paul Singer cracked up to 100.
Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to the economy and cost of living. Now, at Albo's first press conference of the year, like his first day back in the job as Prime Minister, he said that the government's number one target now will be targeting the cost of living pressures that we live under.
Ha.
Now, I think in part he did this because there is fatigue over the referendum and basically a perception that the government was focused on something symbolic, while the whole time they should have been focused on much more material and pressing issues, bread and butter issues that all voters face.
We saw the lower class go homeless.
Yeah, but we also saw Labour dip in the polls. I'd say that would have been even more on his mind as a result of this. So, yeah, he's taken stock of that, and I think, he probably does think he made a bit of a miscalculation there with the whole voice stuff. People are really hurting out there, and he has to at least put out the perception that he's doing something about it. So, in terms of actual policy that's going on here, so here's what he said. He said, I have asked the Departments of Treasury and Finance to come up with further propositions that we'll consider in the lead up to the May budget this year. But he did say that the government is cautious about distributing additional cash directly because that might have the effect of increasing inflation. So instead, he was looking at things like subsidies for energy bills. And as we know, like we said before, they haven't been afraid to get involved in the energy sector. So yeah, I mean, and that's been done at the state level before. State government pays a couple of $100 on your electricity bill for 2 months or whatever it is. The government may well be doing that as well. Because, we're definitely living in an environment where, it's not just the rate of inflation, it's all the green energy tyranny lumped on top of that is pushing prices absolutely sky high. So, Jim Chalmers was on 7:30 the other night, and he was talking about how it was very good news that inflation had gone down to 4.3%. Okay, but one of the reasons for that, I think, is petrol prices have actually gone back down a bit now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah. However, things like, other necessities like rent, shelter, groceries have not gone down. They have not gone down at all. So, Jim Chalmers can be all smiley about having a 4.3% inflation rate. But still, all of these essential items that we all have to pay for are still extremely high. I would say that just like other kind of consumer goods, like electronics and that, all right, maybe they've gone down a bit, but that doesn't really matter. That's, that's not bread and butter. And so just to kind of illustrate an example of this about, grocery prices, when you look at leading food rescue organizations who distribute, what these organizations do is when grocery stores like Coles and Woolies throw out veggies at the end of the day. Yeah. So Oz Harvest, as long as they're not rotten, they take that unused food and then they distribute it to charities that then, of course, pass it on to homeless people, the hungry, etc. They are facing enormous delays in actually getting all of this food out. Enormous queues. They've got all of these charities saying, hey, we need more of all of this. And they just can't keep up with the demand. And the reason why is because, well, you were saying before, people are going from being in an economically precarious position to just outright being homeless later on, living out of their car or whatever it might be. And yeah, that means that they go in the food lines. And now Oz Harvest cannot even keep up with that demand.
It went from, like the small population of mentally ill, and unfortunately that is a growing population, and the drug-addled, which unfortunately is also a growing population, to quite literally the working lower class.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mortgage boom hit. Even the guys who even had their own house, or quote unquote, lived in a house, they're on the streets now.
Yeah. Okay, now the government did acknowledge, on the other hand, that even though we've got this new inflation number that's a bit more appealing, grocery prices are still very, very high. And that's despite the fact that Coles and Woolies are still announcing very, very high profits.
Ever paid fucking $2 for a red onion? I have.
So, what is the government doing about that? Well, they are appointing former Labor Minister Craig Emerson to lead a 2023 to 24 review of the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct. So, yeah, he's going to... Craig Emerson, by the way, remember the guy who sung the Whyalla Wipeout song?
No.
He was an absolute fucking clown of the Rudd and Gillard years. It was to do with the carbon tax. Like when the carbon tax hit, Tony Abbott said things like, "Oh, the sites in Whyalla are going to shut down." And then when they didn't, Craig Emerson came out and sung this ridiculous song where he did a play on the Skyhook song.
Oh God!
Horror movies, and he sung it out of time and out of tune, and it was just cringe, absolutely. He liked doing kind of theatrical things, but he just ended up looking like a clown. So yeah, don't worry, voters. Your food prices are soon to go down because you've got Craig Whyalla Wipeout Emerson at the helm, helping you out. Now, the government is also considering other options here, and this is to ensure businesses are passing on lower costs to consumers. So that includes shifting from industry-led codes of conduct to government-mandated requirements and a strengthening of consumer rights in sectors where market dominance has led to unfair pricing. Okay, I don't see how any of that stuff is really going to bring prices down. More regulation, really.
Yeah.
I hate to go libertarian, but yeah.
Hey, Woolworths and Coles, experience their biggest fucking profit boosts. How about we just squeeze their balls for a little bit until they cry?
Maybe. We've all got to boycott Woolworths now.
Yeah. No Australia Day stuff. Fuck them. But also, like, again, like if you find nationalism in fucking purchased products, I guess you are a conservative. No, nationalism is not fucking like like buying something from the store. Nationalism is having a Barbie with your mates. That's what it is.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I like agree and disagree with that statement. Like,
I have no faith in fucking corporate entities.
oh no, of course they're soulless.
Yeah, it's the same as the stuff you buy from them. Go get a flag, fucking do a Barbie, talk to your people. That's nationalism.
It is. I mean, it's very sort of like micro level nationalism, but unfortunately, that's kind of like all we can do, and like the only options we have.
I'm only suggesting the realistic.
Oh yeah, I know. Okay, so look, just one last story to kind of illustrate the state of the economy at the moment. So new government data is showing that 72 projects worth more than $68 billion across the nation. This is in our top industries, which are coal, iron ore, and oil and gas, have failed to advance in the last year.
I wonder why.
So what that means is, like, they have not advanced. So that means the projects have been either dropped, delayed, or not progressed, or gone backwards. That's between 2022 and 2023.
Well, was it because we were fucking them with tariffs and fucking basically like under the ground carbon taxes? Oh, was it? Oh, I didn't know.
So this means that investor confidence naturally has been shattered in the energy sector. Because remember, I mean, all of those industries are obviously tied in with the energy sector. And it's really the backbone of the Australian economy, certainly the WA economy and the Queensland economy, no doubt.
We sell rocks.
Yeah, we do. We got a lot of them. So look, business groups and that are have the usual things to blame, like industrial relations changes, tax shake-ups, all that kind of stuff. They do mention environmental policy. I'll definitely agree with them on that. But look, I just wanted to remind people that, believe it or not, the Labor government is looking to reduce immigration by about 25% for this year. I don't believe it'll go that far, but yes, they will slash it as in comparison, to the 600-odd thousand people that we imported last year. That, of course, has led to the housing crisis, to making inflation worse, etc., etc. But the reason I mention that is because now we're not really going to have any artificial way of bumping up the GDP numbers. So when you've got all of the signs, like what I just mentioned there, these 72 projects essentially just stopping, going backwards, and when you've got construction industries and the construction sector generally
still shitting the bed,
yes, all of those are signs of an economy going into recession. The only way you can make it look like it is not happening, that a recession is not happening, is by having a huge surge in immigration to keep GDP artificially afloat. Well, with that immigration reduction this year, they are no longer going to be able to do that. So in other words, I'm telling you, you're in for a shit year, because we could well have an official recession. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we're already in recession because wages continue to go down in relative terms. So do living standards. And then all the other things that, we don't talk about in economic reports, like people's mental health, divorce rates, things like that.
The actual health of society.
Yes, the actual societal health and cohesion is always being fractured. All of that stuff is getting worse.
How does this personally affect me?
Right. Well, look, like I said, I still think it's going to go into technical recession. So, even the free marketeers will have to admit that it does affect them in a way, because they're living in an economic zone that is in recession. Okay. Now, on housing, Australia's property prices have risen by 8.1% annually over 2023. So that is almost double the current rate of inflation. So like I said before, even though you might have inflation at that nice, like seemingly low number, well, all of the
try
things
hard
that matter,
assets.
like the stuff that matters here, like having a roof over your head, their rates of inflation taken individually are way higher, way higher. Petrol is really the only one that has gone down, and that's only in like the past month, by the way. You know, that's been about it.
I'm still paying like fucking $2.20 a liter for diesel.
Yeah. So in WA, we're trying to kind of make that better. We're now issuing interest-free loans of up to $300,000 to building companies. So we're trying to throw them a bit of a lifeline here.
That's not going to work.
Maybe not. I mean, okay, so look, it says
No.
it's targeted at small to medium-sized builders. Of course it is. I mean, 300 grand.
Residentials. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that, what's 300 grand to a company like Multiplex? It's nothing.
That's Tuesday.
Yeah. So.
Oh, actually, no, that's 1 hour between like 1 and 12 p.m. on 1 and 12 on Tuesday.
Yeah, it probably is something like that. So yeah, that's strictly like small builders around here. And yeah, I agree. It probably isn't gonna. Maybe it might help some of them sort of stay afloat. But in terms of the general health of the construction industry, no. Where you think not even that, it might not even help them.
Not even that, man. Like I've seen like one of the smallest residential, like quite literally brick and mortar, single story, half-acre builders literally blow through $300,000 in a week.
Yeah, shit. So would you think maybe this could be better if they up that loan, like beyond 300,000?
I mean, like, you get to the threshold of say like, oh, maybe like $500,000, which like may, if they have a decent turnover rate, like get them through a month. The problem is like materials prices have gone down, but they've got so many binding contracts that a lot of builders were just trying to get work, losing money hand over fist for a good year and a half. So a lot of them are already actually in the fucking debt sink to the tune of about 2.2 million. Well, I've heard one that was in the debt sink for about 3 million. So what at best 10% as proposed, and my proposition is at what best 20%.
Oh dear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and it's going to be a lot harder to mask all of that stuff this year. All right, so just lastly on housing, there's a new plan here that is being spruiked by Warren Mundine, who of course was sort of like one of the most prominent figures in the No campaign, himself and Jacinta Price. And this is to do with getting more Aboriginal Australians into housing. But no, oh man, it gets even worse. So, well, it gets even funnier. Into housing that they buy, own. They actually own their own house.
Yeah, your best fucking stand-up comedian couldn't come up with a better joke than that.
So, this is a new Labor government initiative that's been taken in the Northern Territory. And it's sort of like they're trying to quell criticism as well, I think. And that's why maybe tactically this was a bad move by Warren Mundine to jump in behind it. But they're trying to go after Labor for saying, you just only care about the symbolic and the virtue signalling when it comes to Aboriginal issues. You won't actually do something concrete about it. So now the Northern Territory Labor government is saying, okay, well, here's something. We're going to try and help them own their own house.
Well, let's see if they can bust open the concrete and shit in it.
Well, look, this was actually something that was it never went past. But I remember this was like a Labor policy, which was where like the government essentially helps you pay your loan on a house. But that would just mean that like the government would have a share, would be like a part shareholder in the house. But it was more complex than that. Like it really did not, you barely had any title over the house yourself. Now, I'm sorry, I haven't read through the fine details of this plan. So I don't know.
We got a similar proposition done by the Labor government, both federally and in Victoria, where I was like, oh yeah, like we'll give you like a less like aggressive payment plan rate, but also you don't actually own the house at the end of the day.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this could well be sort of a copy of that. I'd say it probably would, because there's no way these people are going to be able to afford it themselves. They need someone. They need another entity to actually jump in and foot the bill for, I would say, most of it. So yeah. And yeah.
Welcome to a year and a bit ago.
Well, look, just like the majority of Aboriginal projects that set out to, help Aboriginal people stand on their own 2 feet or whatever.
Go on YouTube, Google Aboriginal housing, and listen to a contractor saying, this shit ain't right, John. This shit ain't right. Because trust me, you'll see an Aboriginal house. Yes, by the way, that brown mark on the wall is a hole they punched in the wall because the toilet was no longer functional after being partially destroyed. And yes, they were shitting inside of the fucking gyprock.
Yeah, well, I think I've probably told this story before, but I heard from a guy who was a carpenter. He used to work up north, I can't remember exactly where, but, the northwest of the country. And he said that there was an Aboriginal house where they literally had taken the roof off of the house, all of it, and they had used it for firewood, just when they would light a fire in the backyard. Right? So they just dismantled the house essentially so they could light fires. Yes, really, they do stuff like this.
We have to build a new Aboriginal community up in the Pilbara and Gascoyne and Kimberley area. Basically, every 2 years, we've even introduced legislation to stop them being condemned so early so we don't have to move them. But yeah, right. We have to move these people periodically because they destroy their own housing.
Yes. Yeah, and then the government just builds it back up again for them to destroy all over again.
Anyway, don't come here for good news. I'm just going to say that outright. No. Like, going forwards, we are not a place for good news.
No. We do hope in a way that, like, the bad news that we... and by the way, it's completely not intentional, which I guess...
Some ways it's schadenfreude. Sometimes the bad news is on bad people.
Well, I mean, look, there are benefits to being triggered. Okay, we hope that being triggered actually spurs people into a little bit of action, and that, I guess, is kind of what we like to do here. And there's a distinct lack of Australian content as well, if I can get on my high horse briefly. I mean, there's still guys out there doing good stuff, definitely. But, we are actually one of the few Australian shows out there, because our environment is definitely not friendly towards people saying the things that we do. But yeah, if you're triggered by this, if you're not liking any of the news that we are giving you, do something. Even if it's just reaching out to other nationalists who live around you, at least start networking with them. Anyway, let's move on to the Republic. So Labor had planned to have a Republic referendum in their next term of government. Okay, assuming that they would win the next term. Yeah, I mean, we don't know if Albanese will even survive that long, but anyway, they have junked that commitment, and this is unsurprising for a number of reasons. But remember that Peter Dutton actually wanted to have a second voice referendum. Yes, he did. He said in the event that he was elected, he would have a second one. Well, when the no vote resoundingly won on referendum night, he walked that back, or it might have been the day after. And so he said, no, we're not doing that. We're sick of the referendum cycle. Australians are sick of the referendum cycle, so we're not doing it. And it's the same kind of thing here with the referendum for the Republic. Labor is saying, okay, we induced voter fatigue with all of this. Australians are sick of it. We also made it look like we don't care about the bread and butter issues. In other words, cost of living pressures that voters live under. So we have to make it look like we're just focusing on the issues close to home here and not more symbolic stuff like a republic. So,
and why push for a fucking republic? Like maybe if it was just a straight republic, you know, like no strings attached, maybe you could actually get that to win in Australia. Maybe. The problem is the Republican movement in Australia is just so top-loaded with gay and dumb shit.
Oh, it is. It's awful. I mean, it was run for ages by Peter Fitzsimon, Red Bandana Man. It's awful. I mean, look, I'd like to have a platonic republic where we have an Australian head of state. But I do not want a republic because it's like a symbol against colonialism or something like that. I want something far from it. And by the way, that was actually I'm reading the White Australia policy by Keith Windshuttle at the moment. It's the only book where. Sorry,
that's a good read.
Have you read it all?
Yeah.
I have. Okay. I mean, look,
I was forced to function like Threat Point back in the day to read it. So yeah, I did.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm reading that, and I'm reading Gaza, like I said, by Norman Finkelstein at the moment. I always read like 2 books at the same time. I don't know if that's a good habit, but anyway, I really disagree with what he says about race in that book. He actually says like it's not a scientific category, and no serious scientist takes.
He does a K-Mac, yeah.
He does. But he also mentions how, like, in the early days of Australian nationalism, where you actually had very strong Republicans who wanted to not just for Australia to break with the monarchy and become a republic, but also to declare Australia as being an exclusively white republic. So I got to point out that being a republic, or being a Republican, and being an Australian nationalist are certainly do not have to be mutually exclusive. They can actually go together very well, and there is a history of that in Australia. So,
unfortunately, bringing the contemporary Republican movement kicking and screaming to that point is just...
Yes. So in that respect, obviously, I am not talking about the current Republican movement, but absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
Anyway. So look, in case people didn't know this, we do actually have a position referred to as Assistant Minister for the Republic, and that's held by Matt Thistlethwaite. So not only did he say that Labor is not going to have a Republic referendum in the next term, assuming it wins office, but he also said that there's no timeline on that, and that there's no plans about having committee hearings or any kind of, government consultation process where they go through the rounds to set up what would be a referendum further down the track. So that led to people in the media, and this is actually a good question, saying, what the hell is the point of your job then? There's no committee coming up. There's no referendum coming up. You don't even have one scheduled. Why the hell do you need your job of Assistant Minister for the Republic? Very good question.
What is?
Okay, so move on to Aboriginal news, and this is also very much mixed in with news on Australia Day. Australia Day is on January 26th to our North American listeners, so it's coming up pretty soon. And whenever we kind of approach around this time, people are obviously interested in Christmas and Boxing Day sales and stuff beforehand. But once we're a little over that, we start focusing on Australia Day. And of course, it is obligatory for every news channel, every publication to want to present both sides of the story. Meaning that if you're going to talk about Australia Day, you also have to talk about Invasion Day.
And lambasting the white race.
Which is ultimately what it's about. that's the real agenda behind it. But
again, you could change the date. You could do whatever the fuck you want to do to Australia Day. They will still attack you because you're white.
Yeah. So every year it gets worse. And, I've been saying for a while now, ever since we got gay marriage in Australia, I believe that, culturally speaking, Australia Day is the prime target of the Australian left, particularly the far left. And yeah, again, unfortunately, this is going right along with that pattern of things getting worse. We've now got over 80 councils Australia-wide who have dumped their traditional Australia Day citizenship ceremonies and also other general Australia Day, celebration functions that they do. So yeah, others go a step further. They hold their own Invasion Day ceremony. They do things like flying the flags at half-mast to symbolize a time of mourning for the Aboriginal people when they apparently lost the sovereignty that they never had, because Australia did not exist prior to 1788.
Even when they call it the land of nothing. Literally, land of nothing, and also not even their own language.
Yeah. Tasmanian Aborigines, like their dialect, did not even have a word for land. All right. They want to tell us about how Aborigines live in perfect harmony with the land, and that it forms the foundation of their cultural and religious views.
Cough, cough. All Aborigines were about 300 years away from Easter Islanding themselves. Cough, cough.
I think that Tasmanian Aborigines were going to go extinct I think they would have gone extinct if white people or any people never even went there, because they had regressed to such a scary state. They were just going to die off. Because you know how many there was, like back when they called it Van Diemen's Land? You know how many, like the peak number of Aborigines in Tasmania? Do you know what it was?
It's like a few hundred, wasn't it?
Oh, it was 2,000.
2,000. Okay, so 2,000. There we go.
Well, okay. In a landmass that is, about the size of Ireland, there was 2,000 people there.
My God, the famine even didn't bring you guys down to that level.
I know, yeah. Okay, so I'm sure we've heard that Woolworths is... they have confirmed that they are no longer going to be selling Australia Day merchandise. Now, in all fairness, they do still sell the Australian flag, but that's just something that they do year round. They don't just bring it out for Australia Day. So look, previously, Kmart was a company that announced that they were going to stop doing that. And
Kmart.
Because Woolworths have announced it, that also means Big W, because they're part of the same conglomerate, or whatever you call it.
I'm going to Kmart. I want to buy a fucking cheaply sold together basket for my kitchen that's sprayed with fucking copper paint. Oh, yes, I'm going to Kmart.
Right. Okay, now, Woolworths did put out a statement on this, and they actually mentioned two reasons as to why they made this decision. So one is the gradual decline in demand for that merchandise over the years. And secondly, it's because of the growing debate about what it means, about what Australia Day means to different parts of the community.
Cool, corporation. I'll put your opinion right in the fucking trash can where it belongs.
Well, look, I'm going to go and say...
You are not without wax.
Well, look, I reckon that those two reasons are actually probably true.
Yeah.
They're not good reasons for it.
There are corporate bodies, they're PR, and there is fucking like a waning desire for it, because this nation is no longer a nation in the Greek sense of the word.
No, definitely not. And when you do that, I mean, how is it possible to actually harness a sense of national pride if the actual what it really means, as in like what you feel in your bones to be part of a nation, ceases to exist? well, you're not going to exhibit any form of national pride. And why on earth then would you go and buy stuff to celebrate that national pride when you have none to celebrate in the first place? So yeah, absolutely. I'm not surprised that there is a gradual decline in that demand. And then, of course, the next part, yeah, well, I mean, they're just capitulating. They want to look woke.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just PR. It's some like fucking middle-aged woman in the fucking like marketing department having a problem with her fucking like her fucking her ovaries at that point. Like, I mean, like, that's it. Boil it down to it.
right.
And maybe you know, a shadowy mercantile figure in the background whispering in her ear for the media she consumes and from the university she went through to get that piece of calligraphy. I mean, that's it. That is all it. And also, like, by the way, if you get any sense of nationalism for something you can exchange currency for that you pick off of a shelf, I think you're a fucking moron.
Yeah, I was actually going to say I find it like, you know, a little tacky, the Australia Day merchandise generally.
Yeah, my made in China bullshit. Yeah, like, yeah, that's nationalism to me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't like that. I mean, I still obviously I celebrate Australia Day. I usually go to, you know, some kind of a function. I like putting, you know, the racer will put out a few nice graphics and stuff and that kind of thing. I prefer to do stuff like that than, yes, buy some plastic shit. But that's, you know, that's not the point here. I mean, the point is that really what this illustrates, which is the erosion of national identity and therefore national pride, and also capitulation to woke culture, if you know, if you want to call it that.
Nation means people. Nation,
Right.
literally, in the epistemological history of nation, it literally means people. It means tribe to some degree, but also in the sense and a sense that we should adopt going forwards, it means phyla. It means brothers. It means our men. So if you're not spending like Australia Day with your people, talking about your issues or discussing, you know, what in this case what quarrels our nation, you're not really spending Australia Day, are you?
No,
you're not.
Now, okay, so Peter Dutton has actually, I got to say, I was surprised by this. He called for a boycott of Woolworths. So he said he described the move as an outrage.
I don't want my
and he said
overpriced cheese Kranskis anyway.
so he said that they were deciding on behalf of customers how they should feel about Australia Day. It's up to customers whether they want to go in and buy the product or not. If they don't want to celebrate Australia Day, that's a decision for them. For Woolworths to start taking political positions to oppose Australia Day is against the national interest, the national spirit. Wow, you actually said national spirit there.
There we go.
He
that's a nice little dog whistle.
It is.
Let's see if that bold faggot actually, bold fuck actually follows up on it.
Yeah. So yeah, look, that's what I wanted to comment on. Was when you know, and as a result, of course, he's now saying don't shop at Woolworths. Kind of pretty amazing. And Labor is saying that Dutton is engaging in a culture war. Well, I wish he was engaging in a culture war. But yes, you called it a dog whistle there, and that's kind of all I see it as well. This may be a cynical ploy to win over people like myself and Nolsey, all right? Although I think we're a little bit too clued on to fall for that, especially after seeing what Trump did. But yeah, and you know, it ultimately means nothing.
It looks like Voldemort, but less based.
These are words. There's no official government policy to counteract this, to do anything about it, you know, except maybe teach people more about how they should answer a citizenship test. That will do fucking nothing to improve social cohesion. So yeah, I just say don't get too excited about Dutton saying that. That's all. Okay, now I guess we got sort of a white pill here. This is coming from the Cumberland City Council. So one of their councillors, Steve Christo, I think is how you say it, This guy's actually formerly of the Labour Party. He split due to certain disagreements, and now he's actually launched his own party called Our Local Community. And they are going to dump the use of the Welcome to Country ceremonies.
Good.
And Welcome to Country is where Aborigines officially welcome all non-Aborigines to Australia. Now, he did actually make the point, because I saw him talking about this on Sky News, that it's silly to be welcome to your own country. And yes, it absolutely is. It's condescending as well. But then he had to play the typical card of like, we're all Australians, aren't we? Why pit one against the other and distinguish between Indigenous and non-Indigenous? Okay, yeah, he's got all that shit. But the point I want to make here, though, obviously this does not counteract the 80 councils who are scrapping Australia Day ceremonies. But I did say before that when the no vote went through for the Indigenous voice referendum, that did, I think, start to kind of create a little bit of energy in Australia, generate a bit of courage for people to actually push back against all of this ridiculous Aboriginal crap that we've got. So we're seeing it now, albeit on a small level. We're seeing things like people pushing back against Welcome to Country or acknowledgement to country. It might be on a small scale, but if you're someone who, say, I don't know, is part of a P&C group or something where you have to have an acknowledgement of country, maybe push to scrap it.
Again, we're seeing the precipitation of the larger crystallized idea that we're moving into an Australia where Aboriginals are actually truly no longer a part of the conversation. Not only were they a part of the conversation to demonize white people.
Yes.
Yeah. So Aboriginal irrelevance is not only just on the horizon, well, it's right bang smack in front of us.
Yeah. Okay. Now, over in Queensland, the leader of the opposition there, the Liberal National Party, David Crisafulli, has said that they are going to, if they were to be elected, the election is in October, that the new government would axe immediately a newly created Indigenous Institute that is tasked with overseeing treaty organisations, that being a treaty between Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people. And you know what that means? It means money. It means what you Americans would know as reparations. Is essentially what it means. Now,
that's what you pay at the Indian casino.
But yeah, look, this is another thing that I believe we would not have if it wasn't for the thumping no vote.
Yeah.
So for a couple of reasons. So the premier back then was Anastasia Palaszczuk. Now, she actually said that, and by the way, there's a new Queensland premier, Stephen Miles. So they had, committed to this treaty process that, was just going to result in big payouts to them. And also truth-telling hearings. This is basically where we formally document lies by Aboriginal people, and we ironically call them truth-telling hearings, where they make shit up about how they've been treated by white Australians. We don't have time to go through that right now, but take my word for it, that's basically what it is. It's a shame.
It's more laughable than certain stories about wooden doors in Poland.
Yeah. But then, after the no vote went through, Palaszczuk actually withdrew her commitment to the treaty process. She did that because the National Party had, shortly before that, withdrew their support. Previously, there was bipartisan support for a treaty process, for reparations to happen. The Liberal National Party saw the no vote and said, okay, maybe it's not such a good idea to back that. And then Palaszczuk said, well, this can only succeed with bipartisan support. So the Labor Party is actually going to scrap it as well. Well, in her very last month in the job, she actually went backwards on that, and she made the commitment again to treaty. But yeah, the Liberal National Party is going to axe it, and this is actually a promise I think they'll keep.
Actually follow through on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's popular, and I mean, why else did they change their position? You know, they were clearly reading the public mood that was communicated in the referendum. Okay, so the WA government is going to cap the sale of alcohol to either 1 carton of beer, 1.5 litres of wine, or 1 litre of spirits per person per day in the towns of Broome and Derby. I don't
Why is
think I need
that?
to tell our listeners. I'll give
Cough,
you a
cough.
clue. They're both in
Aboriginal
the
communities.
northwest of the country, and they've both got high populations of a particular demographic. Now, the police are saying that needs to go even further, and it needs to be applied to further jurisdictions as well, not just
When
Broome.
they're fucking properly boozed up, it's like they're on fucking PCP.
I mean, to be fair, they're probably on petrol and paint and God knows what else at the same time.
Benzines and alcohol.
Albo is also saying that he's committing to close the gap.
Oh,
again,
fuck.
to show he's not all about symbols, but he's about taking real action on all of this. And yeah, he's going to announce more stuff on that later in the year. Okay. So quickly go to Tasmania. Erica Betts, who is the veteran Liberal Party senator, he left at the last election, though, 65 years old. Well, he's going to come back in the Tasmanian election, which is going to be next year in June 2025. And he is said to be from the far-right conservative faction of the Liberal Party.
We shall see. We shall see.
We're just doing quick stories here. We know we're kind of up against the clock. So the Queensland Teals. How do I explain the Teals to Americans? I guess they look a
They're
lot.
rich and they're gay.
Yeah, these are sort of like, you could say that these were people whose parents would vote Republican if they lived in America. And then they got brainwashed with environmental and, anti-racist propaganda.
They want to keep Daddy's trust fund so they can spend it on profits.
Yeah, but they still want to keep kind of all the economic stuff as well. You know, they like a nice, they like their parents' trust funds.
They're the ultimate libertarians.
Yeah, in a way. But at the same time, they want like draconian environmental policy. They're basically like, I've called them green liberals before, liberal in the Australian sense.
They're the revival of hippies.
Yeah, they're sort of like inner city latte sipping, trendy hippies who like money. Is how I describe them. Anyway, they're going to be targeting the Queensland election, which is, like I said, in October. So they haven't really focused on Queensland before. They've really only focused on Victoria and New South Wales, although we do have one Teal in power here in WA in the seat of Curtin. But yeah, the reason why they're targeting or now looking at Queensland is because of the electoral success of the Greens in the last federal election. Because remember, they did actually take Kevin Rudd's old seat of Griffith, an inner city Labor seat. And also, what's that one they took from the Liberals as well? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Of course, the seat of Brisbane, the capital. Yeah, which was a long-running had been a Liberal-held seat. Yeah.
So now you get the Teals. Green for the Greens Party and blue for fucking Liberal.
Yeah. Now the Teals call themselves independents, and on paper they are, but all of their money comes from this this NGO called Climate 200, which is run by another trust fund boy called Simon Holmes à Court, who, just kind of lives off his father's fortune. Okay.
Now to the disturbing news.
All right. I just realized a couple of these stories are kind of boring, so I won't go through them. I will just say that, just quickly on defense here, more than $36 million in bonuses for the ADF, the Australian Defence Force staff, has so far been ticked off by the current Labor government. And this is in a bid to bolster the number of uniformed personnel, the number of people who are joining the army and also staying in the army.
Are we having a recruitment problem?
Low rates of recruitment, and they've got also very, very high turnover. Many people are quitting.
Oh, dear Lord. I wouldn't want to fight and die for a country that doesn't mean shit.
Yeah. Now, despite this injection of funding into the ADF, they're still not really paying off. Now, get this, how big were some of these bonuses? So they had given 721 ADF personnel a one-off $50,000 retention bonus. Wow. That is massive. That is huge. I mean, think of like the cost of living packages they offered nurses, along with a piddly 3% pay rise. They'd offer them like $2,000. Oh, here's your cost of living bribe.
Hey, and nurses see more combat.
You have 2 weeks of wages, like that's it. Yeah, you're probably right. Nurses do see more combat. But yeah, wow, 50 grand, just one-off payment, essentially saying, please don't leave, don't quit. Our numbers are shocking. You wouldn't get that in a country where people don't really like the idea of simply fighting for an economic zone, would you? That wouldn't have anything to do with the reduction in national pride.
And we need you to die fighting them in about 5 years?
No. All right. So the ACT Human Rights Commission, which has got to be the most posed commission in the country, because it's the ACT, the Australia Capital Territory, has called for teenagers to be allowed to access voluntary assisted dying. Euthanasia, in other words.
No, yeah.
Wow. No, I don't think so. Maybe in really extreme cases, the parent can decide, I guess, in consultation with the child, if they're facing, if they've got a terminal illness and they're in a heap of pain and they're going to die anyway. Maybe. But yeah, I don't know if I trust people under 18 to make that choice.
The pipeline is already worked out. We get them on sexual reassignment surgery and then we allow them to kill themselves.
Right. Okay, now this one, I don't know, this story just kind of grossed me out, so I wanted to talk about it.
Some real RDF shit.
Yeah, so Western Australia is planning to lift its ban on posthumous fertilization. Now, this is because you've got this woman, 62-year-old Perth woman, who wants to conceive a child using the sperm of her recently deceased husband. Right?
I feel like there's an affront to God in there. But the thing is, when I step by step it, it's an affront to God at every step.
Well, look, I put this in at the last minute, but I do remember reading a bit on this story previously, and that was that she did win the right, through court or whatever, after her husband died, to extract from his body his sperm because she wants to use it for fertilization.
I'm going to stick a rod up his ass and tase his prostate like the IDF do. And I'm not joking, that's actually what they do.
Oh, okay. Well, look, but you see, here in WA, we still have a ban on fertilizing yourself using the sperm of a dead person.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm even putting those words together. But that's what we're into now. Yeah, look, I am not a religious person, but I would prefer to actually just word it in terms of I can't really see this is such a fucking around with the laws of nature and like the way things are meant to be with the natural order. This is just really, really extreme. To say the least.
Hey, a lot of wise men have said we'll live to see man-made horrors that are incomprehensible to us. Here's one of them.
Yeah, definitely. So with those lovely images, we'll wrap it up on that. But yeah, just to summarize that, WA, just because of this one example, wants to lift the ban on posthumous fertilization. My God.
Hey, and with that taste in your mouth, good night.
Yes.
Good
Sorry
luck.
for those incidents. So guys, you can find all our stuff at theracer.biz if you're a new listener. Go there and you can find all of our links to places like Telegram and to Post and all of that. We've decided that, at least for the foreseeable future, we're going to try and put this show out on a weekly basis on Friday. Sometimes life gets in the way, so we might not always hold to that strict schedule. But yeah, once again, thank you to everyone who shilled for us to get us on the rightstuff.biz. Really appreciate
Thank you, guys.
it. And yeah, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.